Now we're eagerly awaiting Joe Adamusco here for another one of our Visit Think Tank Spitfire days. It's a brutally cold morning, and I'm sure he's going to be ready for a cup of coffee when we get here. It's a cold, brutal morning out there. Cold. But we really are waiting for... Hey, the coffee is brewing, and I know Joe's going to want a cup of coffee when he gets here. We haven't even really woken up yet. Oh, I love the way the lights reflect in the wood floor. This is truly building weather. Still a little bit of snow on the ground. Most of it's melted, but it won't affect us here at the Spitfire factory today when Joe gets here. Not a leaf on a tree. Not a leaf. Now the thermometer says it's 25 degrees out there, but inside, oh, that coffee is just, there's just no way to explain how good it tastes on a cold day like today. This is actually a photo print that Dave did.
Well, he did the drawing. I took my Sato 72 into him, and he used lunch hour to make a drawing of it. Okay, then he superimposed it on a scale Spitfire that he kept blowing, moving around until the engine fit in,
That's neat. I've never seen this before where they have it. Well, it's pretty accurate. Pretty accurate.
Yeah, and
Boeing. Better be accurate.
And these are probably old Patternmaster airfoils, but he was, he was working on something like that for me.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the profiles that he kind of set up for me, and this is basically the fuselage slab with the thing on the top.
Right.
But this is what I wanted to call your attention to. If you line this up, which is pretty much, it's scale.
Yeah, it is scale.
And you put the nose, the spinner on the spinner and the ogive line up and all this. You see how the fuselage, I know your theory on this because I looked at all your videos.
Yeah.
We talked about this before, but you could see where I'm thinking that maybe just a little bit would be.
Take another quarter inch off.
But it's just a matter of, but I thought you'd find that interesting.
Yeah. No, when I did from the scale drawing, I looked at this. All you have to do to convince yourself, look at it inverted. It looks like the plane's going to be flying up a hill.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But again, how much do you want to trade away to scale? This is always a compromise, And in my case, the compromise can't be that I spend 600 hours and a plane won't make the top 5 cut. Oh, Jesus. Walk into that.
Oh, let me see the spinner here. That's really.
It's a little under 2 ounces.
And that could be.
And you can massage it. Here's what I want to do. I want to get a Vico tip from a 2 1/4 and then cut this off in such a way that we have a Vico tip, because it'll eliminate the heaviest part of the spinner is the steel bolt.
Yeah, unless you can find aluminum.
No, I'll find that. That's. I just got to find one from maybe from a 2 1/2 inch spinner or something. They're larger, know.
Okay, here's some other goody stuff thing.
This is a nice picture, by the way.
Yeah,
that gives you a good shot of the ogive up there too. Yeah.
Detail on the front of it.
It gives you a real look at the angle of the exhaust too.
Here's some photos of my molding process, how I do it, and then how I cut the center lines, and then how I make these things.
Okay, and you got the bucks here, of course.
Yeah, they're the bucks. When this is all on flat glass, and let's say the bucks are made, and these things are, put a single edge rager, double, whatever, you tape it on here, and then you just run.
Go right around the whole thing.
Zings it
Makes
off.
a perfect
and I
cut.
got photos of how I do it.
Yeah.
But here's, the various stations. This would be for the Highback. And I'm liking a Highback more now that I see these. And a Highback would be.
Yeah, of course. But when you have them both, it's even better, isn't it?
See, the way this would be molded, there's a chance that you can maybe mold this piece all in one, or one here, the nose piece, then the third, or you can do the whole thing if. Looking for what we're both looking for, but doesn't mean they can't be modified. But
Oh no.
They were, you know, made a lot of sawdust. Let's put it that way. So here's a, and here's the cross section at the F1, which is right there. But this is, you see that 1/4 inch space in the center?
Yep.
That was compensated for with that blue foam that I used.
Right, right.
In other words, if you look at this, where the F1 is, the 1/8 inch is already.
You already took it out.
Right.
Right.
And
Now, if you had a piece of sheeting that had a joint right down the middle, or do you like to put the joint in, make 2 clamshells, and then join it?
Well, there's 2 different ways, and I kind of. Yeah, let's see. Before we get, I'll explain all that to you. Here's the. This is the nose ring that was. Matter of fact, this slips right on that thrust bonnet on 9.
Okay.
And that's what I work to here. Because if you put a regular nose ring in, you'll see that there's a difference. So you're compensating for the sheeting. You want, if nothing else, you want a little more sheet in the front so that you can sand around or even double layer if you had to. Right.
Well, what makes this good is, this is usually where you have an issue. If you carve, here's the 2 possibilities. If I make a fake nose from here forward, just make a sheet, lay up a spinner mill, and make this piece out of a piece of 10-pound wood.
Right.
I can carve these out of balsa wood, do all this Ferduskyizing in here, okay? And just like on Miss Ashley, make these valve covers like a mold, and then all you'll need is a little bead of air epoxy light right around the edge.
Well, these look like they'll give you a good start on it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
All right, and here just for reference purposes to keep them together, so if you want to need cross section.
Yeah, of course. Keep them in a bag. I got a bag. I'll get a bag for it.
Yeah, there's one right there.
But the good thing, Joe, when you do it this way, if you make this out of balsa wood, you can make them over and over and over until you're happy. If you try to mold this in one piece, somewhere in the thing, it's going to be that it doesn't fit.
So there's a nose ring. There's 1, 2, 3.
And I've carved these up on Miss Ashley. I've carved them several times. That it's not a big deal.
1 and 7, 10, 14.
Obviously, you got all the back ones.
Yeah. And
we'll put them all in clear plastic bags before, you know.
And the whole idea was to come up with something that would.
Just watch your head here.
As you're doing this.
Yeah.
Trying to make them even, because we don't want to, like 1 hump more on one side.
Oh yeah.
But if you wanted to try, you could do this one in one piece probably, mold it. But the only problem is it would take a piece of sheeting 8 inches wide, 2 1/4. You're going to have to glue up in the center anyway. I think it could be done 1/2, 1/2, and then when I have the techniques that I show you, I use it.
Yep.
Maybe we could put that up on your computer
Sure.
later and look at it. You could see how when you tape that down on this after it's molded, you can trim a perfect. These have to be mounted on the side like this. You do a center line. You mount it on some kind of a back plate where it's flat on the table so that when you run your razor block down,
you can get an even.
It goes straight down.
Oh man, that's like a perfect fit.
But that's going to be, I mean, to me, that's going to be a fuselage. And it won't be any heavier, it just have a lot more area on it. So that would be, excuse me. If you're looking at the Highback.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the Highback myself.
Yeah, the more I think of it, it is classic. But for future considerations,
but having them both is always better.
And Corvette, having both of them here, it's just a matter of you need this part, and then you need need the nose piece, just like you did on the original.
No difference.
And
well, the good thing is we both made both models already. We both made them.
I've been there, done that.
Some of the other stuff. Watch disconnect that wire. You're exactly at the weight the Testarossa was.
Yeah, I heard. Dude.
Within a gram. You're a gram lighter, actually. I did a little work on it after. Now you're really not supposed to move the controls that way.
You're not?
No, what I'm saying is what happens is if you have a lead out that's rubbing on something, you'll kink the lead. If this was sticking on here because you had some dope or glue,
right,
you don't do yourself a favor working the controls reversed. Always work them from the end. And those hinges are perfect, Joe. How's that feel?
oh yes.
I mean, that's ball bearings, baby. That's as good as it gets.
Absolutely.
No, you're not gonna look at the tip. Look how thin that. Eyeball it from the front. Eyeball, you know, like the I-beamer. And if you make it any thinner than that, I think you're getting into high risk. I got it all sealed up with thin CA. Even this tip, this one doesn't matter because obviously it's solid wood, but.
So this is ready for silver.
Well, here's what I would do. Now, I block sanded this out, but you know, I don't want to thin this out and make it a 1/16 of an inch wing. But I would, at your discretion, like 400 of everything.
Radius.
I don't know, radius
yeah,
these.
Radius
right. I would take right here and make a penny-sized piece of 64th plywood. So that under no conditions, because don't forget you pull testing it and everything,
right,
I don't think that'll move, but I'd feel more comfortable with mine. I'm going to glass the middle of the wing. And the only thing that you do another one of these, don't score the middle of the wing. You don't need to score it. In other words, I'll take this piece, and I put CA inside and outside, and you're not going to see it anyway, but that was about the only thing that...
Well, the reason I scored that was to get it to...
Yeah, and the gear blocks are just as good as it gets. Now, here's the thing you have. Flip this over. I'm going to show you what... I realized something. You got two choices now. You know what I'm saying? These gear are going to come out here. You can make a set of gear like a grass set of gear. But you also could make one almost scale where it's got a little bit of a cant to it. I mean, you got a lot of choices here. This worked out real nice.
Yeah, also.
And these, I would just... they're solid as a rock. This is the hardest piece of wood I had. And they're all sealed with thin CA. But it wouldn't hurt to glass maybe an inch of that.
No.
You know, just to, if you have to tweak them.
Well, this will give me some...
Or if you need the trim tab on the bottom, you just put it in where we put it in the tip weight box, you know, and then don't even bother with it. And I'm still not happy with mine. I can't figure a way that I'd be happy making that horn. That's what's got me stumped. That's why I haven't even started on mine yet. No, in other words, if I wanted to have an adjustable horn, like these other planes have, this one's got an adjustable horn. But I don't like the way it works. It's Mickey Mouse.
I think the what?
See how the spinner ring fit on it? I got that. I'll give you the DVD of how I did that. But if we knew right from the beginning we were going to do 2 3/4 spinners, we might have been able to put this curve in. But as it is now, it goes in a half an hour. Not a big deal.
So you...
In other words, I turned this, before the nose ring's on, I turned it upside down on a bandsaw and took a pie cut out of it and just bent it around till it matched up. Put it next to the one that doesn't have it and you'll see side by side.
See, that was when I was doing this.
Because this was set for a 3-inch spinner, and the way it stands now, I'm glad we didn't fool around with a 3-inch spinner.
Yeah, and all right, so that's one of the things I was concerned about doing this thing, doing the buck blind. All right, so look, I mean, all this tells me right here is that, and I'm sure you're going to do this, is you'll just modify this.
Yeah.
You'll just take the buck, grind it down, add a piece, do whatever you got to do to make the buck comply with that. But, you know, you got to work from that center line. But, okay, I see where you are with that.
But it's when you put the motor in there, it just couldn't be better. It's as close as can be. That's got, how close is that?
All right, see,
I mean, that's close.
That's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
Okay, you got that cup of coffee?
What do you think?
That.
Yeah, I use a rubber mold.
Rubber mold.
Yeah, I'll have the DVD for you when you. That's the first one out.
Nice.
Carbon epon. That won't crack or anything. You put the 64th plywood edges on it. The nice thing about if it's carbon, you can open it up plenty big in the back to get plenty of airflow through there. You know what I mean? As opposed to like if it's balsa wood, it's always going to crack right here at the joint. It's going to be, no matter how many times you glass it. This I hope won't crack anyway. I guess we're going to find out one way or another. I got to do the fitting on this, and then when this is fit.
But Here's that.
Okay, these are the ones. Yeah.
Let's see. Can we open this?
Oh yeah.
More. I guess not.
Now what has he got? One is a turtleback.
There's one with a high back.
Man, you got both. How cool is that? The only one I've seen is the one Klepsik sent. He sent me pictures of this one.
But there's
the red and silver.
But I'll tell you what, the more I'm looking at that Highback, I'm saying
you're liking the Highback, huh?
That is, I mean, that's Spitfire City. Period. That's the way. I don't know. To me, that's the way I think I'd want to go. Highback, and my paint scheme with a big weight spinner. Okay.
Now that I can't count. Has he got a 4-blade? Yeah, 4-bladed prop on both of them. But he's got the late model rudder on the Highback. So that's
yeah.
From a 5 on.
So it could be, well, yeah, it'd be more than a 5, probably be like a 14.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
All right, now I'm trying to think here how we can advance this. It's a nice, you know.
Yeah.
You look at that from.
All right, that's a 3-bladed 5.
Right, that would be probably.
That's a real early one.
Would be a Mark 10, Mark 11.
Well, whenever they have that rounded rudder, they're usually pretty early ones.
Okay, now that we got this set up here. I don't know why, but when I try to put these photos on a CD,
I have never figured that out, Joe.
I know how to do it, but I think I get them into a sequence. I want this one to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they come out 1, 5, 3, 4. So just.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well,
all right, we'll just go through them. Let's go through the bucks.
If I knew there was a way, let's see, image. And
you can hit zoom on there and open it up.
Let's see, view. This is what I want, full size.
Oh, yeah, see this? When you send me a picture, that's what it looks like, just right there.
Well then, if we go back to view.
And I can't downsize it. I don't know how to, you know,
well, that's no good either.
What the magic of downsizing is.
So what we're gonna do is just to look at everything on I got to a point where I needed to mold up just a little section.
Okay.
And it shows the buck. And
Yep.
Of course, the buck has a couple coats of clear dope on it, and you soak the balsa up, you wrap it with a bandage, and that works.
And you put the clear dope just to keep it from warping and wetting it out.
And there probably is a better, once you think, you got them sanded to,
right.
I did the best I could, but if you want to get them a little more refined, you could seal it with maybe something that's better, like some kind of varnish or, I don't know. But, Brodak dope seemed to work good.
Yeah, and we always got it sitting around in a bucket.
Again, okay. Ooh, now I think I'm onto something.
All right.
All right, now here's an example of probably where I had both, or maybe one half of the buck, the bandage wrap.
Yeah.
There's the lower, this is the upper. And if you'll see what I'm doing here, is that this fuselage, it's kind of like a stuntress, some kind of fuselage where I actually was able to mold in the canopy.
Right.
But I had to do it.
You had to do it in 2 halves.
1 half, 1 half.
Like 2 clamshells.
Right. And that's just another view of it, This is all preliminary stuff, but just to give you an idea, you could accurately cut these things down, and I'll tell you, when they just come
right up.
Oh, yeah, and that works out pretty good. So.
Now, you haven't had any trouble with the seam showing through after you paint it and everything?
Well, just like in a 96 pitch, you got to get the joint, but the tighter the joint, the better off you can finish it. So
absolutely.
You get it tight, you sand it, you fill it, you tissue it, and you do your thing on it. And as long as you work on it properly, and again, like you're saying, one-piece airplane's one thing, but when you're working on parts, you can get in there.
Oh yeah. First off, another thing you can always do with this, if you did shells, take the wing out and put glue inside. You could, you know what I'm saying? You could put a cap strip or something inside, or a piece of fiberglass.
But the big advantage is you're going to have 1/8 side, 1/8.
And plenty of room to blend it in.
Then when those come together,
yeah,
you'll have a big mating surface.
Right.
And you could really.
You could really get it to disappear.
Okay, so let's see. Here's a. This is the molding buck. I molded one half,
Right.
put them together, saran wrap down the center, taped, well, first of then I'm out of sequence here, so I have to go back and show you, coming ahead here, how the, how I did that. But at any rate, this is after I joined these two pieces. Then I soaked it again, put it on, wrapped it.
Put it back on and give it a
believe
second.
Me, and Dave Downey told me, he says, that's what you ought to do, because you will, any inherent twist or induce this and that from, you soak it a second time and you whack it down.
Are you using ammonia or water or Windex?
Ammonia water. You buy it, you can get a gallon of ammonia water from a grocery store.
Yep, that's what I was using.
Ammonia water. And then you can see where this has just been trimmed.
Right.
So
trimming it, that's the neatest thing. When you can put it on glass and put that cut on there, I can picture. I can't wait to
I mean, it doesn't get any.
Oh yeah, because the way I do it with the rod, it's annoying. It takes forever.
Everything you're talking about with that fuselage is your baseline for everything. If that's perfectly straight, this is perfectly straight.
Yeah, yeah.
When them shells lay on there.
El perfecto, yeah. And obviously that's what everybody wants, including me. Again, I'm out of sequence, but that's the finished fuse. Now this is the Stuntress?
Well, this is one I did for that Ludwig.
Oh, this is Ludwig's plane.
Yeah,
okay.
Ludwig. I told him it would take me 10 years to teach you how to build a good airplane.
Yeah, yeah,
okay?
yeah.
It takes that long.
10 years? It might take a lot longer than that.
I told him, I'll build the airplane for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And in 1 year, I'll teach you how to finish it. Because you can look at Wendy's videos. You can look at the shit I wrote up. I can see how you're sanding, this, that, and you put coats on. What's it look like, this, that, and the other. It's, the low technology, but you put the time in it.
It's low tech, high labor.
But yeah, so he'll be able to get that. But who knows? 2 years from now, he may have a nice airplane. But he got a Strega to fly. Okay, here's just another one that just another view, and this is a little bit overkill here, but this fuselage, 9.5 ounces. I'm pretty proud of the, how the weight. But it's built like, what you build them. And I have a wiggly rudder and adjustable.
Yeah, all the modern stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff. Okay, so here we get into Spitfire. No, wait. This isn't Spitfire yet. This is the raw fuselage. Now, if you look here, you can see where here's half a top block shell already molded.
Okay.
And there's the ball. I mean, that's the way you build it.
All right, that's the 90 Spit.
No, that's the one I made. It's like a stunt, Mr. Awesome.
Okay.
We're not into the. I'm going over this. It's not necessary, but.
No, go through it because it makes sense when you want to see a step and you're missing one.
Okay, but here's a half of a molded top block shell.
Right.
Okay, so you do one inboard, one outboard, and then you join the top blocks, and you take. These are the only thing that's trimmed. I'm out of sequence, so I'll have to get into it. But once that center joint is trimmed, you lay a piece of saran wrap down the top or something, Teflon tape, something that won't, the glue won't stick to.
Right.
You put one half on, one half on. You make sure your joint's tight. You tape it down every so far, and then you just tack glue it with thin CA. And you want to have that. You don't want to glue it to your buck.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you get it glued down,
and take a big chunk out when you go to take it off.
Then you remove it. Then you glue the seam down better from inside. With thin CA. Then you soak it, put it back on, wrap it, and when it comes out of there, it's set. Then the next step would be. Okay, this is just looking at the bottom of it from the inside. And you cannot get any lighter. I mean,
oh no,
that top block is less than an ounce.
You're wasting your time. And you know what? When you hollow one out And right at the very end, you take one more cut and glunk, and it goes right through.
And the cross section is even, and like you say, the grain
is going
in the correct direction.
Right. You got radial grain. It's going in the right direction.
And that works out pretty good. Spreading germs all over everything.
Yeah. If I get sick.
Yeah, I know.
Spitfires are going in the toilet here.
Right, what the hell one was next? Join top block.
But even the crude way I was making top blocks is light years better than carving up a $30 block.
Well, what I did is I just basically improved on the techniques you were using 10, 12 years ago. You know, and I figured, okay, well, I'm doing this.
This gives you more choices because you can do a lot different shapes. You're pretty limited when you're doing, you know, like.
Now, see, this shows the top and bottom blocks on that Mr. Awesome kind of fuselage. It's, you know, everything's wrapped up, and oh, it works so good. I mean, it's well, okay. All right, so here's a case of, again, being a little out of sequence here, but here's I got one half, which would be your port side or inboard half shell.
Right.
And then I have the outboard half shell wrapped in a bandage here. Now, what I did was, on my top block buck, if you try to mold the entire fuselage block in one piece, I mean, you start to get to the nose, that piece of sheet.
Yeah, it wrinkles up. Yeah.
It wrinkles up. So what I do is what I'm going to call that F1 former, the one that's right behind the engine mount. You put a former in there, like 3/16 or something, and you run your sheet to, you got a little overlap, a little shelf.
Yeah, you make a joint.
And then you make the nose piece, you trim it, cut it, get exact, and it drops right in. And you're going to glass it anyway, so what's in there? So what I did was, the top shells were 1/8 inch with this little nose piece. And the smaller it gets, the tighter, easier it is to mold.
Yes. I used to put those little pieces inside, like cut off a piece and put it inside.
You could still do that, except that rather than use 1/8 inch, you can make something out of 32nd or 16th and just reinforce it.
Right, and just make it like a little wedding cake.
And then what I did to the bottom block on that was, I molded the bottom block out of 3/32, but it was a little flimsy in the front. So I molded a little short piece, like 10 inches long, out of 16th, and I tapered it. And then I put those together and made a ply from the bottom of the cowl joint back. So it really stiffened it up, and that's where you wanted to have your additional rigidity. Okay, what's this next photo? And it, again. Oh, we're getting into Spitfire stuff. Okay. All right. So basically what I did, I took the fuselage, laid it on a piece of vellum, drew the outline. So I knew that this is what I wanted. And I got two pieces of this 5/8 thick, very dense particle board. There's a name for it, but cabinet makers use that as a backing for some kind of laminated, exotic wood.
Right.
Side. But it stays straight. It's dense. It's heavy. It sands pretty easy. And I hacked it out with hand tools and things like that. But I made two base plates, 1, 2. That were exactly the same. Not knowing where I was going with this because, wasn't sure. I never did this before. So the way it turned out is, you could see I had one unit that I had after I got all my segments made for the various stations, and then at each station there was a little plywood
and that helps you keep it symmetrical and not deviate
and alignment,
from the shape.
You know where your center line is.
Right.
So the next step to that was...
And plus, you can use up old wood then. You're not using up...
Doesn't have to be very good
You can use up that crap that I gave you.
And you can see here's another, like I had the very first, the nose ring, station 1, 2, 3, and then what I call the F1. And then the 10-inch mark, the 14-inch mark, the 19, the 20, you do whatever all the way to the back. And I would try to, you know, rough, you know, get most of the material off. I'm not as good as with a carving knife as you are, but, you know, I kind of sand it and get rid of the excess.
Yeah.
And then I would tack glue this to that base plate. And then you just, instead of having a fuselage in your hand and you're, you know, rounding the edges off.
Yeah, and breaking it and banging it into things.
You're working with off the buck. Plus you can lay it flat on a bench and, and work it. So this is just this should be the next one. Okay, now to give you an idea, again, I'm out of sequence, but you know, you can make sense of this.
Oh, no, you can figure this out.
I had the base plate, I had these plywood stations in position, glued them in with CA, and at first I was thinking, well, I'll just tack these in, but you're tacking them, you know, you bump a chink, they fall over. So I glued them with thin CA.
Okay.
And then when I wanted to get them out, I just used that debonding material. You soak it up and they come right out. It's not a problem. So once I had all these in, and I made sure that they were at 90 degrees, you know, everything and
and you can sight them. You can look right down the center
line. And bear in mind at this point that these, let's call them formers, these cross-section formers, are exactly the width of the fuselage. All that has to be compensated for later on. So then I just took my blocks and I slipped them into all these things, and then I tack glued all that together. This is just another view of the same deal. All my segmented pieces, nose ring, 1, 2, 3, F1, blah, 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 all the way to the end. So it's all even. Okay, but again, that 1/4 inch dimension will be taken out of the middle. And what I did with, you know, let's just say that number 7 former, instead of it being crowned like that, I lowered the profile a little bit because I know it's going to, you know.
You're going to lose the peak.
That's right. Now, you can look these over, and if you want to flatten it out, or, you know, you could find, I know, you'll do what you got to do with this, but this is just another view of how I set all this up. Okay, next photo. Actually, we had computer working pretty good. I tack glued everything in. And by tack glue, I used thick CA, and I tack it right there, and I tack it right there. There.
Just in the corners. I saw it's oozing out of the buck. I saw where you had tacked it.
Just on the corners, and believe me, that was enough to hold it so that you could sand it to shape. And then when you go to pop the thing loose, you just soak up that CA with that debonding material, and it lifts right out. Pops right out. So that, now that I know how to do that, that's the way I'll, you know, and here's my, like, sanding sticks.
Yeah, but that's all a little fun, the stuff that's fun to invent as you go along here.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move right along here. Let's see, the next view, I think, would be this one. And that just shows a different angle, but, you know, sand it off. Then what I did was I took, after I popped all the little segments off, I laid them on top of the fuselage. And to me, this represented what that top block would actually look like. But I didn't beat the fuselage up by squeezing it and carving it.
Exactly.
And that worked pretty good too. But you have to always work from that parting line or that reference line.
Yep.
And you could see there was, not knowing exactly how that taper in would be at the motor mounts, but that's the only thing that maybe has to go, you know, be resolved here. But that's what it looked like without the base plate on it. Okay, this next photo is...
But you know, Joe, if you didn't have issues to resolve, like this O-drive thing, and you were just making this up like a nobler,
the Nobler's...
You'd be like falling asleep at the switch here. You know, you'd be going,
This is what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
So just another view of how all those segments go together. And, okay, here's...
And knowing that top block is going to be, when you're done with it, perfect.
Now, when you look at this, you'll see that there's a gap in there.
Right.
In that 1/4 inch gap, there's a piece of that blue foam.
Right.
That insulation, construction kind of foam.
Right.
Corning makes a pink, somebody else makes a blue.
Yeah, I've used the pink to make gas tanks.
But that's what it is. So, okay, you can see how the block, you know, everything fits, it's the right dimension going all the way down the fuselage. So the next phase of the project would be, of course, to, here's just another view of this. I took a couple pictures, I guess. And I'm out of sequence. I don't know, that could be the...
Once you've got the foam out of there, you're talking about.
Okay, so I think that represented the completed I took the defoamed the block. So we're just raw wood. The segments are, you glue them together with thin CA, put them on a flat surface, and as long as all your angles are right, these things go together good. Now this next one shows how I did the high back, and this will just give you an idea. Or no, excuse me. This is the low back, but you can see how I had the foam.
Right.
And what I discovered, on the first one, I used the full web of foam from, the whole entire cross section.
Right.
And what I discovered doing a high back is you don't need to use that much foam. Not that you're trying to save foam, but I glued it down with, white glue.
Yeah.
Thin bead, but then after you dissolve or sand off the blue foam, then you got to get that glue off.
Yeah,
and it just makes more work.
Makes a mess.
So what I did with the high back was I just simply put a 3/8 strip at the top, a 3/8 strip at the bottom.
Oh, okay. So now you can peel it right out.
That's right. It was easy.
Yeah.
So it got the process.
I wonder if you could, Joe. Just an idea. I wonder if you could use contact cement.
You could. The only thing is, in some time ago when I was making a buck for some airplane, I don't know what the hell one it was, maybe my Seafire or something, I used double-sided tape.
What I'm saying with this, with the other stuff, with the spray glue, the art supply, you could just heat it with a hair dryer, and it'll fall off.
But the thing I found that using 3/8 wide strips that are 1/4 inch thick.
Right.
It's, you can just take your razor
and you take it right off, yeah.
Razor blade, it flakes right off.
Right.
Sand it a couple times and you're done.
Right.
But this just gives you an idea of what these little pieces look like. It's like a kid's toy set where you.
Oh yeah, yeah. But the point is,
remember when you were a little kid, your mother probably bought you a thing about a square hole, a triangle hole. And you did a hammer, and you try to hammer those pegs into the hole. It was to try to teach
I always got them in. It was take a brick.
Yeah.
But the thing is, whenever you do something, whether you carve a block or not, the next time you do it, you're looking for a little bit of an upgrade. And then as you get to the top of the pile, those upgrades get harder and harder to find.
But see, the thing with this, development-wise, let's say that, couple years around, whatever, that they'll be, I like that airplane, I want to have another one.
Right.
You could duplicate it, and the biggest thing is, geez, these things could build up so fast. Once you
got all this figured out,
let's build another B-29.
That's right.
It's not a problem. Okay, so here's, let's see what this photo. All right, this shows the base plate, which is exactly the plan of the fuselage, and I put the blocks on and I crowded everything to one end.
Right, right.
So you can see that I had this 1/4 inch that had to be removed.
Right, and that makes this whole top exactly the shape with the thickness. It accounts for the thickness of the
So then what I did is laid them down. I taped, used masking tape.
Right,
and everything.
right.
I looked at my center lines, everything was right. Drew a line, and then I sanded. And if I had a better machine tool, would have taken less time. But I got it there anyway. And I just had to remove that part. And
that's pretty slick.
So that worked out good. I improved that technique.
Yeah, I can picture right now if you had a real router table. Holy man, this would be 5 minutes.
And what was killing me is I got whatever I have, a cold or flu, and I'm allergic to balsa dust anyway. And this creamy. But you can see I had my vacuum handy down here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I vacuum 10 times a day. I don't want to breathe any of that stuff in.
Okay, so let's see now. This would be the next photo here. And what this just a little closer up view of like how much of that would have to be removed.
Right. Okay. Well, you only got to remove one side now, right?
One side. Of course, that means your center line shifts. An inch, but so be it. Okay, and here's just another view of looking at the aft end to give you an idea of that much. So it's even. Yeah.
Yeah.
When that gets molded, that thing will right down. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I like about this the most is that the parts are symmetrical. Because the hardest part I have is when I'm carving something up and it's not symmetrical. Oh,
and that's and I found this out as much as I thought. Well, hey, I got for that stuntress fuselage.
Yep.
Figured, hey, I got this thing on my bone. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm doing it all by hand. Then I wanted to have cross sections, so I took after I got the buck done, I took a saw, crosscut saw, and I just cut down through. All the sawdust comes out. And I put a piece of 16th balsa in there, and I draw a line and say, "Hey, that's
Yep.
And then I look at it and I say, "Woo, you know."
yeah, I know that
I was
feeling.
close.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Exactly.
No, you know what always goes through my mind? The first thing I think is, nobody will see this, and I say, bullshit, I see it. Give me that saw.
So here's the beginning of the Highback, and again, some of the lessons I learned from doing the
Okay,
low
this
back.
is the Highback version.
I took that spare, baseboard.
Right.
Cut it to the length needed from the Highback to there, and there's
there's some pretty big blocks in here too.
There's plus, and the blocks they were twisted. It took some time to get them trued up so you had square surfaces to work with.
Right.
But all that said and done, and you know what else this proved to me is that in the future. You don't need big blocks.
Nope.
You go to get some kind of bundle thing where you just get a bunch, even if they're 10 inches long.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all.
No.
And you don't need to spend your whole life looking for blocks, except for the inner wingtip. And actually on these spits, you don't even need them on the inner wingtip.
So what I did here, had the base plate, did my center line. I knew exactly where my stations would be. They'd be exactly the same place as the low back version.
You realize when we're done with this, there really isn't, I'm just thinking to myself, there really isn't more than about 2 or 3 little 1-inch blocks on this whole plane. There's nothing on the fuselage.
That's right, and all that stuff.
I mean, and getting the sheets, you can always buy balsa sheets.
So I used the same tail post.
Okay.
For the Highback, because
yeah, so you can interchange them.
All that is even. The tail post is the same height for the Highback as the low back. And again, I don't know what the length or ultimate, how that's all going to work out, and it could be, like you said, a couple weeks back or whatever, it could be a tail block in there or something.
Yeah.
Don't know yet.
It's always easier to carve that little piece because I tried to salvage it a million times, and you just go get a light block and carve it.
But I'll tell you what, though, and we'll talk about this later, when you mold one half, slash down the middle, you'd be amazed that rather than trying to take one piece of wood and wrap it all the way around.
Oh yeah, it only goes halfway.
Wrap to here.
Yep.
When you cut, you'd be amazed.
I know. I already pictured that in my mind.
So, bulkhead, put them in, everything 90 degree on center line, what have you, and then my blocks would fit in. And I'm not sure, this doesn't have the foam in place yet. Let's see, what picture?
Well, it's the foam that makes this.
It's the foam that's, okay, so here's a picture with.
There you go, with the blue foam in there.
See the blue foam, but in this case I ran a 1/4 inch thick, 3/8 high piece of foam on the top.
And a 3/8 foam on the bottom.
So you had all of that, and you didn't need that.
Yeah.
You put these two things down.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere, yeah.
And it kept and it was strictly there to carve your contours. But
yeah, that's an upgrade.
Each station you were able to remove material to match that line, and initially what I did was I took the plywood, put a couple coats of thin CA on it to harden up the edges because I was afraid you didn't want to grind into it. And then I took a black magic marker and just blackened the surface. So when I was sanding,
as soon as you see it coming up,
as soon as you start to bow, you went far enough.
Right.
And that was your telltale.
Right.
Because I'll never forget when you did those 96 top and bottom blocks. Figuring that out, how you did a magic marker and then you would shave off just.
Caveman. Yeah, but you know what? Cavemen made tools too,
That's right. And we're looking at this today and we're saying, hey, this is what it is. But who knows? 10 years from now, this could be caveman.
10 years from now, you and I will be toast and Dave Downey will be doing this with a CAD cam or something.
But, okay, here's your blue foam blocks. Everything's in alignment, just double checking. So one of the main things was to lop off or get rid of your excess material so that you drew lines on it.
Right.
Cut them off, got them into.
Now, was that your idea to do the foam or Dave's?
Actually,
or kind of a joint thing?
No, Dave and I talked. I did the. Hello, Karen.
Good morning.
Oh, don't want to get too close
morning.
to me, dear.
Yeah, he's still sick.
He's sick. I can't get you along. What's
No.
And
He's
by the
sick.
way, up on your kitchen table is a little holiday sweet for you from Sue.
Oh, thank you.
All right, which you may or may not like to eat that chocolate stuff,
But I do. Who cares about her?
Is it something she made?
yeah, it's her sister Robin, and they got together and they did these things. So
we'll have
They
to
made a
try
little
it.
chocolate. Oh, she loves
you
me.
have a cold, huh?
Yeah, he's sick.
2 weeks now. So good enough, but I don't want.
But not great.
I don't want to.
I'm backing up.
You back it up, kid.
Stay in the
Back it up.
kitchen.
I'm gonna go have breakfast.
Okay.
See you in a little bit.
All right, so let's see, where the heck was I? All right, so blue foam, trim them off, sand them down the contour. Next photo here.
See, this is what I like about getting an early start in the morning. We get our men's work done before the women even have
Okay, now
woken
here's
up.
there's a fuselage. There's the high-back buck.
Okay.
Everything's trimmed, ready to go. And
Right.
just as you see it here. So that's the end of that project part. Now, there's more. I got more photos here. And again, that's just another view of what I did there. And I'm starting to get on. Here's another photo of this the buck ready for your final inspection. And I know you'll work on that front end, and that'll be.
Oh, you don't have to worry, but
That'll be-
that's massaging.
this-
That'll be a lot of fun.
See this?
Oh, there's my honey. He's in Duxford, that one. I went over and ran my hand all over the exhaust and everything.
See this?
That's Duxford.
That's that nose, that flat thing. Here's another. I gave you these pictures before. But
Yeah, and you know what the problem is? When you go to Duxford, there's so much to see. You're overwhelmed. That thing is sitting right under the Vulcan. And you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, I gotta see the mosquito, I gotta see this.
But the high back is the one. All right, now I think I'm getting into. We'll go back to the Mr. Awesome fuselage
Right.
scenario. I can see what I did here. I took the buck. I rotated it 90 degrees. and
Okay.
I have it vertical.
Right.
And actually I used some, I have another picture of this thing spun around, but I have these blocks screwed to the base plate and on a center line. So that what you do is you take your...
Yeah, so it's holding it so you can do the trim job.
That's right. And you tape down your molded half piece.
Right.
You take that... Damn. You take the, the little cutting block with your razor blade in it, and you just
Right.
run it right down there. And you couldn't ask for a better joint. Okay, here's another. Again, I don't know how this happens, but it's out of sequence. We kind of looked at this before. Okay.
But you know what's important is that when you're done with this, you come away with the concept. It's the
Well,
concept that's important.
That's what I'm trying to.
And getting a concept into a video is important because,
Which
I know there's other people like to see this.
you may
and I'm
be
one of
able
them.
to, but you can see here. This is the raw buck
Right.
on these base plates, but it's held at turned 90 degrees so that you
Exactly.
can work on that center line. Now when I did my original molding of this, and
This is one of the critical ones that you have to have the understanding for how you get that center line on
It
there.
took a while to figure this out, but
Oh,
because I learned for the first time, I just tried do it by
Yeah.
hand. It doesn't work that good. Okay,
well, it's
so-
not only, Joe, there's not only a thing of doing it that it's quicker, dirtier, and easier. There's a way of doing it that when you're done, you know it's the right way. Like if you were doing,
Okay, this will give you.
yeah,
Here, you can see in the background there's a half shell. Okay?
right, and it's trimmed,
But I take the base plate, and you can see I got a center line that I'm working from.
right.
I take two pieces of, at least, actually, these were, you can see the rod holes in them. That's probably what I built the Spitfire wings on.
Yeah.
My blocks. So I figured, well, okay, I got that. I drilled holes. I put them on, drilled them on center, but it was high enough to, off the glass
Yeah,
top.
yeah.
Then I screwed this vertical piece to this horizontal piece, blocks of wood, and then I
You
put
made it like a piece of angle iron.
like an eight. That's it.
Yeah.
or in the machine shop they'd call that angle plates that you use to, you know,
Sure.
you'd bolt that to your milling machine table,
Right.
and then bolt your part on there, and that's how.
Right.
There's probably better ways of doing that, but that's what I had laying around the shop, and that's how I did it. That's how I set it up.
But the trick is always to make it as simple as possible, and not that you need a machine shop to make a top block.
And let's see. Again, out of sequence, but this will give you an idea.
Yeah, okay, here's the one that now you got the razor on the block.
Okay, I've got, in this case, I've got the port side half shell taped onto my molding buck. I've got it mounted on this these angle braces on my flat table. Center line, everything 0, 0. And I use a little something here to raise my cutting block up to a point where I have my razor on it. And you just simply run that right down the table and right on the line, and you set the depth of your blade.
Right, set it for 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah, you cut what you need.
Right.
Even if, you know, when it's all said and done, maybe you put a little score mark in there, but then when you're done, you brush on a coat of dope to close the seam up.
Right.
And you're done. So you cut one for the inside, or one for the outside. That's how that works. And there's the other one. All right, so just to reverse.
You just flip it, yeah.
Other shell, right down the end.
I think even doing this, you still beat the guy that's carving a top block. You're
especially if you know that every station is
and if you're looking for something a little that's perfectly symmetrical.
Right. Now what I found is that if you can actually mold this stuff out of C grain if you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's anything A, B, C. You know, you can't do it out of real hard stuff, but you're better off with A or B grain, but it works out pretty good. Now,
I found out another little trick. If you got a bathtub, let the wood soak in the bathtub overnight.
well,
If you really have crappy wood.
If you got crappy wood, but add
Good 4-pound wood, 6-pound wood will go in 10 minutes.
Add ammonia water. Now see, here's my little block, and this block is made out of the same material, the base plate, and I brought a piece for you.
Right.
Tape a razor blade up on there.
And obviously you need a flat table, a glass table or something.
Now see, what this shows is after I joined two halves together.
Right.
You know, I put them back over the buck.
Right.
Taped it up, and then stitch glued it, but you got to make sure you don't glue the shells.
Yeah, you put a little piece of Teflon down the middle.
Teflon, saran, whatever. And then...
And use thin CA when you did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But just enough. You don't want to...
You don't want to float the whole thing, yeah. Because once you pull it off, you can glue the seam from the inside, too.
That's where you're going to do the most good. Because, you know, the outside is going to be tissued, but...
Yep.
Believe me, those seams, they come out so tight, those pieces just
Sure, because your razor's on a 90-degree angle, too. It's not crooked.
Okay, so that was the bottom edge, and I guess this is the very last photo. But what it actually shows is the finished above.
Yeah, there's your
this is the untrimmed part, but after you join it together, you soak it, bandage it up again to get that set into it, then you trim it, and you're home free all. But okay, I thought you can go back through this stuff again.
Yeah, but the whole concept, the whole way of doing this, from step 1 to step 2, you could do this with any design, any shape.
Even once you go up, it.
Yeah, no, you're out of my league now. Once there's more than 2 buttons on a computer, I'm done. Then it's time to.
But you can see there's a comparison, and these airplanes could be any color, any camo, whatever. But right now, I'm telling you that Highback is the one I'd like to.
I think they're both going to be.
And
cool.
you know the reason is, remember our original 96ers were Highbacks. Well,
yes.
I'd like to just take that Highback and, you know, more than just take it up a step. I mean, this would be like a major.
Oh, just having a dihedral. If you left the fuselage like a Nobler, this would still be a big step up.
Okay, so we can.
That's a good presentation. I like. What we're going to do on this, and I'll do it off camera. Is I'm going to take the pie cut that I took out of here, so that the spinner lined up, and I can even do it by eye. I can do it just by taking this one off. take the saw, cut this little piece of mount out, and then bring this, cut through the doubler and through the fuselage and bring this together so that we're basically at the same shape. You're happy with this spinner, right? You're not looking to...
No. That's
okay.
I prefer that. The way
okay.
It's beautiful.
And this you can just get from True Turn, 2-blade, 3-blade. Get the one with the light and back plate. Skip the whole thing. Tell them you want it for a Rojet 90, and it's
do any good to get one that's blank, you know, without not any cuts in it?
Yeah, well, I figured we're going to start with a 2-bladed prop.
Okay.
You know, and a 2-blade you can always make a 4-blade out of without a big deal.
2-blade.
Yeah.
15, 4.5.
15, 15, 5. Now that's the original mold from the Canopy mold, and Dave made a Procast part, made a rubber mold from this piece.
Okay.
Then we don't need this anymore.
Right.
And this has the little solder edges and everything, which come out in the Canopy. But then he makes this part out of Procast. In other words, once you make the rubber mold, you can make the Procast part. Then you can make 1,000 of these, and look how clear that is. It's clear as a bell. Same thing with this. Now, I know that's not going to be the right size.
It might be, well, you know.
And actually, it might be the right size for this, because it was oversized for the other. Yeah.
It's not a big one. But
yeah.
This is the baby I want.
All right, so get the buck. Let me see how it, if we're close. How close is it?
Well, let's do it this way.
The profile is close. You need length, though.
Length.
Yeah.
And maybe a little. Well, see, I don't know. That's where your artist.
Well, what you've got to do is you've got to interpolate this piece in here.
True.
We might not be off by much.
Might not be off by much. It might be.
In fact, before I'd carve another mold up, I'd make sure we're not out in left field here. That we couldn't. I'd have to do it in. See, I can't do these things unless I see them in real life. I can't do things with a pencil. They have to be real life.
But you can again have to study this. Now,
this was a nice mold, though. Even I have to admit that.
But again, this is like. Then if another one has to be made, it'll go up one notch. From like the technique for making these molding bucks, how that came up a step.
Yeah, but I can make these molds in very quick. A week, I can have a new mold out in a real world.
Look like something, yeah.
But I like having all those ribs and angles and the bulletproof glass in the front and everything. And a cowl. This'll make as many cowls as we ever need forever.
And when you get done with those bucks, though, you'll be able to mold up or feed in all.
Well, what's nice about the buck too, you can make an accurate. If you wanted to make a set of plans, you could just take the bucks and trace right off them.
Then you have all those.
Then you got these working in your favor too.
Now it could be that somewhere along the line, working with 1/8 inch, I don't think you're going to need a lot of, because the more formers you introduce, you start to get that sway back.
Right.
But you'll need like an F1 bulkhead. You'll probably need something where the instrument panel is going to be back here, somewhere like that.
Until you make a part, you're not going to know. You're not, in other words, from back here, what I found is if you don't put any bulkheads in at all, there's less chance it's going to give you that starving horse look.
1/8 inch, and here's something else.
But it's got to be 1/8 inch.
You have 1/2, and you have that joint in the center. That actually acts as a stiffener.
Right.
This is.
But the old Nobler thing where you put bulkheads and then the sheet went like starving horse. I'd have never liked that.
Well, there's certainly parts are coming together on this. Huh?
Oh, it's really starting to come together here. What's nice is at some point in time, and your wing is a good example, at some point in time, it's an aeroplane, it's not parts. And that really is starting to be an aeroplane. And from the concept drawing and Dave Downey's drawing, it's starting to come to life.
I want to basically do that same paint job. I'm not gonna,
without the invasion stripes?
I don't want that. Stripes. I got a different thing I want to do, but I want a blue Spitfire with a big white spinner on it. That's what I'm going to do. And I may or may not have a pinstripe or that kind, but
I remember those spinners we had on the 96 Spits.
Everything to
Oh, man.
try to knock that in the bed. I still love the way that airplane flies.
Yeah.
Deep my opening in there just the
Okay,
same.
Joe's got his nose ring ready, and we did the little curvature thing with the motor mounts. Took a little pie slice out, pretty much the same as we did on this one. So that's now
Okay, now
that's now
do I
ready.
need to put the balsa doubler in there?
Yeah, you'll need a little piece. It's probably easier to. It just gives you more room to bolt. You don't need it for that. You need it just when you're going to come up out of the nose ring.
Okay. And I want to make a.
Otherwise, this gets really flimsy.
I'm going to draw this shape.
Okay, yeah, we hold it. Make a little pattern. Whoa! Glad we're not working on a B-2 bomber. Got a pen right there. Yeah, because that wood isn't, it doesn't even touch the nose ring, so.
I just like that. I like the way that looks, and that's.
Yeah, and it's the radius of the Dremel sanding drum, so it makes it real easy to get in there and do it.
But I'd rather do it to a template than.
Yeah, of course. And it what are you going to call it? The nose, nose gouge out, or? You can't really see it without the.
With the base plate on it.
Yeah. It makes it way too high. Yeah.
But believe me.
Yeah, but it's going to be nice. Now that would be good. If you could come up with a way we can make a removable top block, we can just change it from a one version to another.
See, that'll snap right on. I mean, 1/8 inch.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a spicy meatballs.
That may be 09.
Yeah.
The bubble. And maybe in 09 do Seafire with tail hooks or some shit. Who knows? But I definitely want a Highback.
Highback.
Highback, baby.
Highback.
That's classic Spit Highback look. But too far out of the realm of. Because I like what you did here, and I always was impressed with how the noses of everything looked here. I want to get this exact outline. So I needed to make a template for that. You got a little piece of...
I should have made you a little template of that that little piece of plywood too, so you can interpolate it over. That also lets you blend around into the shape. Blend that shape around when you do when it goes from carbon fiber to wood. You know, it'll be a hard surface to a soft surface. Yeah, just press that down. That's all. It's not real critical either. But
I know, but I want it to be close.
Yeah, but you're at a Musco. Let's face it. we know how to work around your idiosyncrasies. Don't worry about it. We've been here, done this. This is what makes it challenging. Okay, and you got that template, and then this we're going to work right off of that point.
And I realize a lot of this is like close until you get to a point where, you can find.
Well, it'll be interesting too. Once you get the plywood base on this, and leave it about 1/4 inch, you can set your holes for your motor so you can choke it and figure out how you want to make the exhaust hole on that, and you got a whole couple sessions of work there.
It's not going to be any different than what you're
Yeah,
doing.
well, it'll be similar.
Sure. Them sandpaper, and I taped it over the, the nose of the airplane.
Right.
Then I took my outline block and I'd slide it
Right,
this way.
right. Put the sticky back on there.
Until you got the
Yeah,
contour
'cause a lot of
there,
curves
and
there.
still see the sandpaper. And there's something, I don't know how you do it, but what I found is the sandpaper it's flat and it won't stretch. If there was like a sandpaper on a rubber band,
Yeah.
or if you had a way of like having the surface of, to make it gritty.
Oh, yeah,
so you
yeah.
could- and then slide it around, but it took some massaging. But
Oh,
once
yeah.
you got it close, then I just hollowed them out, glued that
Yeah.
down, and then, filled them in. But
But what's nice too is this fuselage is even wider, so it's not only wider where the valve covers are going to be, it's wider beyond wider.
But curve and then that flat thing that goes into the nose ring and then them valve covers. God, I mean that is exotic looking.
Yeah, and a Ghost, I just saw it yesterday. The 2008 Ghost calendar has a Seafire on it. One of the Warbirds. You know, there's only really 3 rudders. Dave's got an early one. See that?
Well, it's got a pointing. It's got the early. It's got the big one, the little one, or whatever.
Well, I like the pointy one. The one that's like on my Seafire. You could pull it right off the Seafire plans, in fact.
But here's and it's something I'm curious about. When I was drawing this thing up, I had to not too.
Put it on this one. You're not off by much. Oh my God, you're not off at all. It's almost exactly that.
So there's the.
See, but here's the area where this comes in at 3/8 of an inch. It's going to almost be flat here.
Yeah,
it will be flat.
And that's what you want.
Right, and then from this part back, it's going to be 3/8 with the lip coming up. And then we got to figure out how we can make this fillet look real. This fillet is going to be a big part of it. And I'm hoping we're going to, really get something good there. Something that's really convincing. Okay. Like you want to taper your fuse more. Kick this up. Well, and just cut the bottom off. That ain't gonna hurt anything.
See, this is where if you look at this is the existing fuse. There's your
yeah.
See where that dotted line is?
Right.
That dotted line is the your whatever you want to call it, the datum line.
Right.
That's the bottom of the fuselage. Now, if you lay this over, you could see that there's a. I don't know what that dimension would be, but. It can
1/8 of an inch, maybe.
I know we want it to look like a stunt ship, though, but you don't want it to look like a flying 2x4, and you certainly don't want something to look like it's hanging down in the back.
But see, it's this flat part of the fuselage that's difficult to get this flat.
Well, it's the top. That'd be the top.
Okay, where's the cross section that goes through the body, where the wing goes through? I thought I saw it here. It's not on this drawing.
It might not.
But it's where those two converge that it gets to be a little iffy.
That's pretty cool. You see, if Al Rabe saw that, he'd say, "Well,
yeah, he'd like that. I'm sure he would."
Rise would be from center line to
measure the center of the bolt to the center of the tube. 1.5 inches. I don't think you need the high-rise header. I think
it's not 1.5 inches. To me, it
1.25 inches.
It looks like it's more like a. There has to be a way of measuring this shit, but it looks like 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch. And I'm not really.
But I don't know where they're measuring. Are they measuring off the top of the tube, the bottom of the tube?
It was the center line of the flange to the center line of the tube.
No, I don't know that for a fact. So that's kind of. But the next session, bring a header and we'll machine up the tubes, and I'll take the lathe and cut a back cap for it. Get Scott Dinger to weld it, and we'll make it exactly like mine.
Is this the same thing here?
Yeah, that's a short one. See if the rise is the same. That's only got 1 tube. That was a little on the restrictive side. It's nice and quiet, but it's restrictive.
Looks like a 1-inch rise.
Okay, then that's but when I got these,
I'll ask you.
When I got these, there was only one size you could buy. And then Jacobone got one, and it was he wanted a high-rise one. I think they made it special. I don't remember. I think Jacobone has a spare one too, but I'm not sure. But it'd be good for us to find out. And if Dub's going to make them, he'll obviously can make them any height you need.
Because I know you're going to spend $35, $40 for something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you buy one and it's the wrong rise. Well, then
yeah. You want it to be the right one right away. In the worst of all worlds, I'll mail Dub that one, and he can marry it up. We can do it that way. If he's not sure which one it is, I'll just send him that one. You actually got pretty good room in this car. What kind of car is this?
Murano.
A Murano. George has a Murano.
George?
Venturini.
Oh yeah, okay.
He's got a Murano too. You guys must Murano-wise these things.
Well, this is fits in my garage, and my airplanes fit in it.
You need a couple more blankets or anything?
That'll hold it. I'm not gonna.
That'll get you back to Pennsylvania in style, huh? I'm amazed how cold it is still out here. It's still below freezing. Wow. Definitely not warm. Now this morning we woke up and it's way below freezing today. The wind is howling, and Karen has decided today would be a good day. I'm not so sure she's right either. To drive down to Flemington and pick up her fur coat, do a little Christmas shopping maybe, and try to buy, well, I have to buy Karen, of course, a present, and she's going to try to buy me a present, but we usually, when we do this, we don't buy presents, we buy presents for somebody else. I don't know why that is. And there's also this really cool store down there that sells bird stuff. I'm thinking about getting our bird something for Christmas. But it's cold out there. I don't know if Karen's going to really enjoy this day like she thinks she is. Anyway, we'll take a break from shop, all the stuff that goes on in our shop, and enjoy a cold day. A few minutes with us on our excursion to Flemington. Now on our way out to do some Christmas shopping here, we check out some of the houses in Rutherford, and we're on our way to Flemington, of course, where they do a lot of festivities too, and we always really enjoy. This time of year is just special up in the Northeast. And we always see these houses all lit up at night, but we never get to see them during the day. These look homemade, these decorations. That's pretty. Ooh, he's got the hedges. Look at this, Karen. The hedges like Edward Scissorhands hedges. This is decorated nicely too. See, when you see these at night and they're all lit up, you don't see all the greenery. Look at these big guys. Karen loves these. The nutcrackers. Hey, it's starting to snow. I see a couple of snowflakes coming down. Karen's favorite place, Flemington Furs.
Check it out, 1067.
Smile, do you love Flemington Furs or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, she loves Flemington Furs. Flemington Ferrari. Karen's favorite thing, the day she picks up her fur coat from Flemington. This is one of our favorite places. It's a store where they actually have the kiln. They don't use it anymore, but it's part of the store. The kiln where they made the pottery. Pretty cool place. We're gonna get the kids some Christmas presents here. This is really a cool place, and as you can imagine, Karen got a lot of the kids' Christmas presents here from. Look at this big pot they have out here in front even. Very cool place, Flemington, New Jersey. She's a happy girl. She's got her coat. She's got her dishes. She's got her Falls graph. But where's my Ferrari? What happened to my Ferrari? We went right past the Ferrari dealer and I forgot to get my Ferrari. I think we have a guy here that needs a few bumper stickers. Check this out. He needs take a perfectly good car and ruin it. A great end to a shopping fiasco. How much did we buy today? Well, we really did have a great time in Flemington, and we've got a ton of stuff to wrap. So what I did, I got up real early this morning so I could lay up a cowl for me. Joe took his cowl and lay up another spinner back plate that's underneath there. Let this cure out for the next day or so, because I know We got some pretty special stuff happening today. Karen has got a bunch, oh my God, the stuff we bought down in Flemington. And wrapping presents. Now, normally she would wrap these up in her little work area upstairs, but we got so much junk this year, we've got to wrap it down here. And so she's going to take over my shop for the day. Say goodbye, nice shop. See you later. And of course, here we are, freezing cold day. We have all our gifts to wrap, but when I go to do the email, we have the mandatory, and I mean mandatory, pictures from Rich Warbird. Oh, so this will keep me busy thinking about this ogive here and thinking about the next steps on the Spit projects. Well, Karen's getting ready to do some serious wrapping. And I don't mean black music, I mean wrapping. Now, how can you not like this? Now, I'm going to tell you about a great scam. Bill Rutherford had a great scam. He was going to play on me, but he fessed up today. He was going to have our friend in Houston that owns the real Spitfire, let him sit in a cockpit and taxi it up and down, and then have him do a flyby as if Bill were flying it and shoot video and stuff. But he knows I'm not going to be impressed with that. But what we did find out is the gentleman in Houston put the Spitfire up for sale and got $2 million for it. And here's one of the ones I really like, the G-Fire. Look at the spinner. How cool is this? G-Fire. And that is all red, almost like a Ferrari. Hey, that might be worth thinking about. What's he got on a cockpit here? Rivets or stars or what? Anyway, it's a bubble canopy one, and obviously we want to do a, well, we're not committed yet. And Joe seems to have put himself in the camp of wanting to do the turtleback one. Anyway, we really look forward to this every day when we get photos from Rich Warbird. So, Rich, thank you very much. We appreciate all of these. Whether it's the Razorback or the Bubble. And this one was flown by the Polish Air Force. See the flag up on the front? An early model one with the round rudder. There's the one Joe modeled last year. Look at that paint job. And the tail hook. This is the one I think that's on the 2008 Ghost calendar. It's a Seafire. Yeah, and as I finish doing my pictures, I see Karen is unwrapping all of the wrapping paper here in a bubble wrap. I think I'm going to have to get over there and bubble wrap. How you doing with that wrapping, baby?
I need some help.
Oh, I need help. Oh. Yeah, that is a nice looking, a Spitfire in red. Hey, it could happen. This is all the Falls Graph stuff, right?
Yep.
Oh my God, Falls Graph.
False graph.
False Graph. Oh, look at this. This is nice. Nice biplane. Hey, nice train. You have good taste in Christmas cards. So anyway, this is what we got. One of the things we got. What's this? Salt shaker? Oh, for mixing epoxy. Why didn't I notice that? One of our friends that has a neurotic dog. Look at the book she bought him. What is my dog thinking? One of Karen's pet wrapping tricks. She uses wallpaper.
Well, Victoria.
Why buy all that expensive wrapping paper when you can use wallpaper?
I don't understand, Woody. That's not it. This is a very heavy package.
I know.
And this is dishes, so...
I'll bet Bruz Brodak is just going to be thrilled when she sees this idea.
Oh, when you're a pain in the neck, but that's not it.
There's a surprise every minute on Windy Videos. Wrapping with wallpaper, I love it. That is nice wallpaper.
Well, it's Christmassy wallpaper, but it's also very heavy duty, so these dishes will not split the
Yeah,
paper.
that's the thing you see, and you can't see this.
Well, you can split the paper.
This is like fiberglass. This box is a Falls Graph. Falls Graph.
false graph.
False graph.
With a TC.
TZTT. There's nobody in the world would know that that's wallpaper. That really does look nice. I'm telling you, is it very creative, my love. I'm very impressed. Now, the next little step on this morning, we've let this dry. This is the second one we've made. And there's always some epoxy that drools and drips and whatever. Now, and at this point in time, the most important thing is don't stick your finger underneath here. Now, what I did with the last piece, I made this a little bit thicker by adding 1 layer of 2-ounce cloth. And I just wanted to see what I can do after I do the machining on these and true them up. I want to peel this back real carefully because I don't want to get a splinter. There we go. And boy, these are, it's like handling a porcupine here at this point. Okay, now that looks like we have another usable part. Now, we've got one already. So in a matter of a couple of days, we've made 2 of them. And these are, I'm guessing, without even weighing them, just by picking them up, because they need to be machined and trimmed and everything, I'm guessing we're looking at about half of the weight of aluminum. And there's no way this is not going to be strong enough. I've used carbon fiber back plates on Miss Ashley and on the Typhoon and on other planes. Totally fine to use. The only problem that I've ever had with these is when you over tighten the spinner. And if you get too rambunctious over tightening it, it could be a problem. But again, we're going to try to be careful. We're going to try to do a little improvising here. But we have 2 of these. Now what my purpose is every time I make a cowling up, I'll have a little bit of resin left over. I'll make an extra one because the material I'm using is basically all little pieces of scrap. But that's turned out to be a real good mold. And by the way, just for reference point, these are 20 bucks a piece when you buy them. This is a $20 piece, and it's $10 extra to get this little thing machined out. So this little guy has already made us basically a few dollars worth of parts. Now, I was explaining to Joe when he was here that this is fine. We don't know when we finish the model that we're going to not be using this, or that we're going to be able to machine off a 1/4 of an ounce or so off of this part. But if this model is finished and we know it's going to be nose heavy, if we know, now I doubt Joe's will be a problem because Joe usually likes a little extra nose weight and I usually don't. But I want to have this choice, and it gives us one more choice, a choice that we normally wouldn't have. It's just like a carbon fiber tank. If you need nose weight, you don't need a carbon fiber spinner and tank. But if you get to the point where you just want a little more performance and you're ready for it skill-wise, when you're ready for that, this is what allows it to happen. And now it also allows another thing. Anybody else that would like a carbon fiber backplate for a spinner, they can see how to do it right off the video. You can basically do it yourself. Now, the last step on this is EPON has a strange little quirk. It's hard right now, but it gets harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, up to 7 days. They tell you at Tech, the Tech specs on this are after 7 days it's maximum hardness. It helps if you put it up by a heating vent, might go to 6 days. But also, before we would use this part or machine it, we're going to have to put it in our post-cure oven at 200 degrees for 2 hours. And what that does, it cross-links the molecules, and basically just like a prop or just like any other part, once you post-cure it, it gets a lot, an awful lot, more rigid, stronger. In every way, it becomes a structural part that's really strong. So this is one of the parts of the program so far that's been very successful. Very easy to do, very inexpensive. This is probably about $5 worth of molding rubber. And I think anybody can replicate this, even if you're using a 2-inch spinner. You can do something like this. But anyway, the rules would be, Don't make these out of anything but EPON. Make sure that they're cured and post-cured properly before you do any machining. So we really can't touch these for 7 days. Post-curing can be done right now, and it could be done 10 years from now. It doesn't matter. Post-curing can be done in an infinite time window. Now, the things that I found out from dealing with the people, used to be Shell Oil, but now it's a different company, but the people are the same. It's just been sold off. EPON is a wonderful thing to have, but keep in mind it's not a hobbyist product. You always want to use rubber gloves, mask, and ventilation, and you don't want to spill it and get it all over your hands and on your shoes and everything. So it's a wonderful product. It does a job that it's meant to do. It's relatively expensive, and it needs to be handled like a razor blade. You don't pick a razor blade and just start juggling it. You've got to use it with care. And when you use it with care, it'll be a very good friend. Now the cowl mold, what I'm going to try to do is carefully pull it apart. And with any rubber mold, part of the thing you want to do is always be very careful with it. It's delicate. And in this case, because we've tried to get the resin all up under the edge here, there's some spots where it's sticking, which is okay. But we want to pull this back very, very carefully. I don't want to, the thing to not do is just rip it right out and think that's going to be the answer, because a lot of times you can take a chunk out of the rubber unnecessarily too. But what you try to do is find a little spot, like ripping a phone book, where you can rip from a corner or an edge. And in which case it looks like, oops, looks like I've got this. I woke up this morning and we have this is the first day we have real ice on the pond. Now see what I'm doing? It's like ripping a phone book. I'm not trying to just pull that part out. And once air gets in there just a little bit, now see we've got some of this material stuck down here. And it's like all little porcupine razor blades. And this is one of the things when I don't remember who it was, maybe it was Midgley and I don't even remember, coaching somebody through doing one of these. And they said, oh, I ripped it all apart, because they thought they were just taking a cork out of a wine bottle. Sometimes you'd just have to break the edge very carefully. And I thought I'd show this once, so it's clear what has to happen, and this just rips away. Now right here we have the resin, it's right up on the corner, so this is a little bit trickier, but we'll get it. And usually if you can just get one corner or one edge to start peeling up. Now see what's happening here is this half-ounce cloth is hooked to the mold. And if I can get a corner, which I just did, now I can start to pull it away. Here we go. There we go. Now it's ripping. And once we get one side, of course, the rest, and again, I'm trying to be delicate. I just don't want to rip this up. There we go. Okay, that looks like another totally usable part once it's all trimmed off. Super, super light. You can beat the hell out of it. And it will resist the heat, fuel, oil, heat, everything for the life of the plane. It's got a relatively nice finish on it too. Now the next step on this, of course, is to just get either a scissor or a Dremel tool or anything and trim off most of the excess, not all of it, because once this goes into post-cure oven, and I never post-cure things in a rubber mold, and maybe what I'll try to do is post-cure this today so I can start working on it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go stick this in a post-cure oven right now, and by this afternoon this will be ready to do some work on if we choose to, but we got another project I want to work on here at the same time. Now what I want to do, and this is strictly a test, nothing permanent here. I want to take a piece of, this is really scrap wood. This is not good wood that I have that's in inventory yet. I still need to get some, hoping we can get some anyway. Now, Joe has made this buck, and of course it's pretty accurate. But what I want to do is I want to do a test, and I've already figured out that I need about 24 inches of shell to get me to the turtle deck. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I have 24 inches is going to be right up to about, I'm just going to put a dot on this. And then see if I can get a piece of scrap wood and just run a test piece. Now Joe does this a totally different way. He does it in half shells. I just want to see if it's practical to make one shell. And this will just be the front part of a turtle deck, what should we call it? Highback. So let me go down. Actually, I have this wood out in the garage. George at one time cleaned out his shop and got rid of all his, I don't know what you would call it, his RC wood, for lack of a better word. And this doesn't even pretend to be 4 to 6 pound wood, but I'm going to see. This is a very gradual shell, and I'm going to see if I can make one out of it. Now, what's going on here? This is purposely a piece, and you can see, just look how old this wood must be. It doesn't even say contest grade or anything. It just says balsa wood. Anyway, but to make a test piece, this is what we'll need. Actually, it's wide enough. It's 6-inch wood. But if we were doing this, we'd take 2 pieces of good wood and put a joint in it. But for a test piece, this is going to be fine. What this is going to let me know, in fact, I'll go about 1 inch longer since we're not trying to salvage any of this wood. And, yeah, sure. I looked at both ends of the grain to see which end, you know, one end really got ratty. And one end looks like, believe it or not, this almost looks like A-grain wood. Yeah, it's got one bad spot up here. We'll put that on the inside. But this might make a good test piece, because what it's going to allow us to do is see what this shape looks like once it's all trimmed off. And I don't know if this is the way Joe is going to want to do his, or if, I don't know if this seam is going to come popping out in the middle of this. I don't know, but we're sure going to find out one way or another. This is going to allow us, just having this one piece of George's old scrap wood. I love how old this is. This has to be a 20-year-old piece of wood. $3, because this sheet probably now is 20. Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to trim this off, get it soaked up with ammonia, and be ready to make a test. You know, it's funny. You can even tell when you go to cut this wood. This is really like, I'm guessing this is 12-pound wood or something. Now that is some solid, you can even hear it. Anyway, now the next step is to get out the ammonia and soak this. Now before I wet this down, and I'm going to put gloves on because I don't want to smell like ammonia the rest of the day, I have the center line here and I have the glue joint, and I'm going to try to, because this is 6-inch wood, this will allow us to know. We're going to run off on one side. Actually, we got to trim about, I'm guessing, 1/4 inch off each side. Now what it'll mean is I'm going to, and of course I want to keep the joint right in the middle if I can. And I'm not sure that's what we're going to wind up wanting to do or having to do, but for a test piece, this will certainly be fine. And once I trim this off, and if I line this up on center, see, I can't have wood sticking out the bottom, because what's going to happen is it's going to inevitably crush over and distort the whole piece of wood, or put an unnecessary stress in it. So I can cut this down. Next step, just cut this down, and I'll be ready to wet it down. And with that amount off, I think we're ready. This is ready to get out the ammonia. That is a good way to keep the smell to a minimum. Get a fan going. In this case, what I do, I work over an old towel and then immediately take the towel and throw it outside. Because this smell, at some point in time, even the strongest person is going to get affected by it. The other choices are, maybe I covered up the wood. The other choices are you could soak this in a bathtub of water, hot water. The hotter it is, the better. But I've found that ammonia, if you have 4 to 6 pound wood, you can use Windex, you can use water, you can use anything that'll make it wet, a garden hose. But when you have 10-pound wood, when you have this real heavy, this nasty stuff, nothing beats ammonia. Now, there's ordinary ShopRite ammonia. They make 2 kinds of ammonia that I've seen. One is straight ammonia and one is already watered down 20 or 50% or something. The stronger it is, the better. And it really stinks. This really can get to you after a while. So I try to do this when, right after stinking up the shop here, I'll get a fan going and go have a cup of coffee. But you want to, of course, have both sides going. The more you can use, the better. Let it soak in. If you can let it soak in 15, 20 minutes, even better. In which case, we'll go get a cup of coffee here. It's about that time of day. Now, if we were able to go outside and it's way below freezing. Now I'm just going to let this soak, in fact, whatever I have left on here. I am going to go have a cup of coffee, come back, and this should be ready. But again, if you could let this, get the lid on that ammonia, if you can let this soak another 5 minutes, the longer this soaks, the more pliable, and it's already starting to become pliable. Even this wood's becoming pliable, but it really does take some time. 4-pound wood, it's amazing. You can go right, put the bandage on right away, but this real heavy wood, this takes time. Now as this softens up, and it took a few minutes for this to soften up, I can basically bend it and get some of the curve pre-curved in there, which is always to my advantage, because I want to see if this is going to split. See, it's such hard wood, I just want to see if it's going to split on me, or if the glue seam's going to pop or something, in which case I'd have to go glue another piece of wood. Now, if we make a seam, we'll make it with CA so it's impervious, and then we'll probably run a little strip down the middle. Now, before I put this together, here's another trick that I learned. Even though this is kind of dry now, I want to put some more ammonia on it. Now, Joe mentioned a good thing that he found out in the course of making shells. He found out that if you mold them once and then, I don't know, some amount of time later, go back and put them back on a mold and squeeze them again, you reset the wood cells. Because what you're really doing, the ammonia is loosening up the resin between the wood cells. I forgot the name for it. Doesn't matter. We're not in a tree growing business here or anything. And now Rich Warbird wanted to have a bunch of these shells, and I'd be glad to send anybody to molds, these molds have been all over the country, of course. But the thing is, you don't want to make the shells up a year before you're going to use them. You want to make them up, a week or so, and leave them right on a mold, right up to the day you use them. This way you get the benefit of having all this, the wood resetting the cells. Now here's another problem you got to run into. These bandages come out, they have 2 types. One is just cloth and it's stretchy. The other one is self-stick. The self-stick has some kind of little sticky stuff, so as you wrap it, it kind of sticks to itself. I like those better. They're about $1 more a bandage, but these you can buy in any Walgreens, Rite Aid. They're $2 or $3 a piece. No big deal to have a couple extras either. And they do get kind of slimy after making 8 or 10 shells. And there was a time, maybe 10 years ago, we were making shells all through the winter for, God almighty, for every design we ever had. Now, I'm going to take Joe's original thing, and I don't think this is the way he originally envisioned it, but this is going to allow us to see something. Normally I would start the wrap from the front and work back, but I'm not. What I'm going to do is put a couple of pins in here to hold this in place. Hold it kind of on center while we start the wrap. I'm going to go back to here. Now remember, this has a reverse curve in it. I'm going to do the same thing here, just randomly, and not on the glue seam. Put a couple of pins to hold it. Now I'm way up above here, So what I want to do is I want to start and just get some idea of how this is going to wrap. And you need to, well, there's a lot of ways to do this, but this way I know will result in, we get it wrapped on itself to begin with. And then squeeze it down to the other side. And we made this about 1 inch or 2 oversize. Now as I'm wrapping from the big side down to the small side, trying to keep the bandage as flat as practical. You really don't need 1,000 pounds of pressure, but the more you can squeeze it down, the better. Especially what I think we're going to be doing is what Joe suggested, doing these twice. Putting them on the shell and then trying to squeeze them down even more a second time. And I want to, the most important thing, I want to see how this front is going to, how it's going to respond to that curve. Oh, that ammonia's stinking. It's still stinking in the shop even though I got the door open. Now I've got it loose. Now this is the part that's usually going to split, crack, distort. We don't know yet until we actually get to the end of it. Now, problem is, you can see we're at the end of the wrap. Well, now what I need to do is, just for right now, hold this down, get another bandage, and start maybe halfway. Because up here is where it's going to have the most taper. As soon as I get over to where that can't go slip backwards, and now I need to put a lot of pressure on it, and I may have to do this, take some pie slices out of here or something. We're going to find out. And usually you will get a wrinkle or a twist or something up there, but it's nothing we can't deal with. But right in the beginning, we're just going to see how this is going to work out. Now I'm putting as much pressure as I possibly can on this, really trying to nail it down. And again, another trick for this, if you're like we are, working in the winter time, put this up by a heating vent. That heat will help push everything down into place. Now up here, I know we didn't get it as tight as we really want to on the first time, but we're going to basically put some time into this. And maybe what I'll do up here is just do this front part 2 or 3 times until I see how it responds to that reverse curve. We're going to see. Anyway, I'm going to put this away. We'll come back to this tomorrow. Now one last step I did, I put a third bandage up here and really tried to get it as tight as possible. And really, that's what I'm doing, is squeezing the hell out of it here. Well, we're going to see how this works out. Notice what we're trying to do now is set up a lot of stuff, prototype parts that we can use just to see how this fuselage is going to lay out. Because what's going to happen, we're going to wind up with a part here where I need to do this front piece and the cowling, and I can work on that whole nose, and that's a couple of weeks of work. I also have the wing to work on, but I'm trying to space it out so I'm not holding Joe up. And if I can get one of these pieces to fit real nice, I think it'll help Joe a lot. I can even just stick it in the mail if he wants it. But one of these, that's going to sit in the mold. And I think we're going to, I just have a feeling we're going to have to do that front piece twice. We're sure going to find out. But again, until you do one, it's just talk. Okay, so for now, the next step we're going to have to go for, and I've been trying to plan this out, is once I can pull this piece apart, get a look at how it's going to fit on a nose section. Then I can do 2 things. I can start fitting up the cowl, fitting up the nose section, and basically spend a few days on that nose section up there. That's going to be the next step. Also, once this part comes out, see, I just don't have enough of these bandages sitting in inventory here, and I have to find a piece of wood to make a test part, a test turtle deck. And I could really, at that point in time, I can start fitting up or see if we're going to be happy with this shape and get some idea of what this whole thing is going to start looking like, because this is the only way I know how to do it. If I had a CAD cam, you know, all these angles and things, they look pretty on paper, but some of these things you just have to see them, and I have to anyway. I shouldn't say everybody does. I just have to see it in real life before I can do the artwork part of it. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to put this out in a post-cure oven, get this post-cured up so that I'll have the option of doing all the grinding and sanding and fitting up the plywood parts if we have time later in this session. Now we had some more snow overnight. Oh geez, at least I don't have to shovel today. Whew. What a great day to be building instead of shoveling. And it's our first day that we have ice on a pond. We've entered the ice season. And it's going to sit out here 2 hours. Boy, the thing is really, look how cold. It isn't even showing a temperature yet. But by changing these light bulb sizes around and how many we have burning, we can get it right around 200 to 210 is a perfect post-cure for this. And if it sits there 2 hours, once you shut the light bulbs off, you just let it cool in the oven down to room temperature. You don't pull it out and throw it out in a puddle of water. And then it'll be ready to work on that. Now while we're waiting for our post-cure to go, we're going through our email, and of course Rich Warbird is keeping us totally lathered up over this holiday. Now I wish, if I had the computer skills to do this, I would love to see this mirror and put my picture in a mirror. I'm not sure I could even, I don't even think I could fool Bill Rutherford with that. And of course the silver Spitfires that both Joe and I really like. That canopy, whoa. That is, I don't know. I was really sad to hear that Spitfire that we got to see in Houston has been sold. I was hoping this next trip we go down to Houston, we're going to get to fondle it again. And of course the mandatory 5-bladed prop that inspires me anyway. Now just get that Photoshop thing out and plug me and Joe into the cockpit here. I think this would be great. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that, but that would be fun. That thing Bill Rutherford wanted to do, by the way, that I thought that would have been a great scam if he pulled it off. But as usual with Bill, he talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the video. This is actually a good photo while we're going to be working on a cowl to get some of these angles and shapes and ogives and exhausts. And that little scoop right above the exhaust is a cute thing we could maybe incorporate. Don't know. This is one of the clip wing versions. Oh yeah. Don't forget, whenever you look at a Spitfire, these engines turn the opposite of Americans. They go clockwise. Oh, that's a beauty. That's a beauty. I know Joe and I both favor that rudder right there. And Rich, as always, you've made our day complete here. There is no such thing as enough Spitfire photos. There just isn't. I don't care how you do it. That is absolutely fabulous. And that will inspire me. See, here's a good shot with the cowl where the chine scoop comes out. And of course that taper into the spinner that we're working on with the mold that's sitting in the mold right now. Anyway, Rich, well, as always, we appreciate it. Keep the twins happy. And, well, keep sending photos, baby. I really do appreciate them, especially in this cold weather when we're basically prisoners in our home for the whole day, but it doesn't matter. It I can't picture a life I'd rather live than the one I'm living right now. Hey, now tonight we got a little bit of time here, and I was just thinking of doing some of the prep work on this. Probably won't get too much done, but I can get an hour or so of work on this. What I need to do is accurately trim off all the extra material, and especially in this corner, because this has the Coke bottle shape where it's going to pick up that corner, and it looks like we got a little bubble in the resin. Never a problem. We can fill those in, thick CA, thin CA, aeropoxy light, anything. But the first thing to do is I have to get this accurately marked off before I can trim it. Now what we have to do, two things. I want to trim this extra material, but then we're going to have to, by hand, take off about a 1/64 of an inch of material to make allowances for what will become the edge. Or if we want to reinforce this even more, we can use 32nd, but then we have to take a 32nd of an inch of material off. Because whatever material we're going to take off to make the edge, we have to compensate for it, of course. In fact, I can see already. This is going to get to be a tricky shape because this really does come together like this. But before I go to just start cutting on this with a Dremel tool, it's always good to do this. Also, it also gives you a little bit of a visual aid in picking up where that line is, which you really can't see real clearly on the black. And I was hoping that this tape would be stickier, but because this was in that silicone mold, it's a little on the slippery side. And it's only got to stick long enough. It's only got to stick long enough till we can get this stuff trimmed off. And actually, if you like that carbon fiber look, like if you were looking to make a plane where it looked like carbon fiber when you were done, that's a pretty nice finish on there. Now I got the outline on, and now I need to put a brand new parting wheel in the Dremel tool. And this is a part that's very tricky because if I start getting too aggressive, I always break the wheel. In fact, almost guaranteed I'll break the wheel anyway. But I want to leave the last little bit on there. I just want to trim off the big amount. The last little bit I'll get with a sanding block till I get the fit that I'm looking for. Now before I go at this with the Dremel tool, one of the tricks is get any loose edges off. See these little loose pieces? Because what happens if this wraps in, if the Dremel tool catches that, it wraps it up and just sucks your hand in. Oh, this is one of the tricks. And of course I've mentioned never use that saw, a little saw blade. Always use a parting wheel just in case you do hit your hand in the beginning, you don't take a finger off. And boy, that blade that has the saw teeth will take your finger right off. That's amazing. Get all these loose ends off just to make my cut a little bit easier. Some idea about how quick that comes off, but boy, don't let that tool catch. Now that last little bit, I'm just going to take a sanding block and work my way up. I don't want to try to, I always try to leave a little bit on. I'll do it over by the sanding block, and I use my tape as a reference for that. Now for these surfaces, to get that last little bit down, best thing I know of is the carbide block, and I need to get right into this corner because of the curvature of it. And there's still just a little bit of material on there. A little bigger than what I know I'm going to need. Because course, now the critical part of this is going to be to get that last little bit off. So it'll make up for the little edge that we're going to glue on there. Now the next step is, and we still have to true this edge up, but we have these little molding flaws. No matter how careful you are with this, you're going to get little bubbles. Now here's the way I know to fill them very quickly and efficiently. This is the easiest way, is just let them fill with carbon dust. It's EPON dust. EPON sands almost like balsa filler coat. Now it's filled. Now with those little, I take the oldest CA I have, because this is, I want it to kick off slowly. And while it's still wet, while it's still soaking wet, I take a piece of sandpaper, and what it does, it kinda, and you do this, repeat this 2 or 3 times, and that little spot will be gone. It'll be filled with carbon dust and hardened with CA, and then you can block sand it right out. Now once all those little imperfections are filled, we had a couple of them here. A couple of them, you close your eyes, you can't even feel that now. Now what I need to do is carefully, before I do the final fit, I want some 220 sandpaper, and using a circular motion, I just want to grind and get that surface good, a good tooth. I want anything shiny, and this gets rid of any little silicone that may have picked up from the mold in that final coat of EPON. Again, the EPON, once it's post-cured, is relatively hard, and it sands very much like balsa filler coat. Now the 2 things I need to do next, make sure I have a grit on all this, because the less I can sand, the more I can sand before I attach it and try to build this edge, the easier it's going to be in a final analysis. Now we also need to roughen this edge inside, because that's where the glue is going to catch. And glue is it's not real happy unless, when you sand a composite part, anytime you glue to a composite part, you should roughen it up as much as possible. In fact, if it's going to be structure, it should be 80 grit. Now we're not doing structure here, this is just going to be a cosmetic edge. But if we were gluing something that was going to keep the wing from folding, we'd want to have 80 grit here. And roughen it up. The more of a tooth you can make on it, the better. That's rough in there. This is all gritted up. Now before we actually, and I know this is oversized, it's going to have to be trimmed, but I want to start with a straight edge, if I possibly can. Doesn't that sound nice? Then once I get this edge straight, and this is a part of it that takes quite a bit of time. This is not going to be a 5-minute job. That's why I wanted to start it late in the day like that, in case I don't finish it, because it can get boring. Getting this fit just the way we want it. Now when I have that, now I can go across and you can see that Coke bottle shape that we're looking for. Now I'm always tempted to just go over to the belt sander and stick, but you know, when I do that, I always take too much off. It's a problem. And it's going to be these corners that are going to be critical in the final fit. Now with the piece just sitting there, I can see some of the fits are real accurate. And when we have the cowl mount and that's pressed down, we're just going to have to see where we're hitting hard here and if we can make this as accurate as possible. And by looking at it, it shouldn't be too difficult. I think we're pretty close. But you always want to pick the spot that's hitting first, like installing a piece of sheetrock. The part that hits first, and take a little material off. And it looks like this little bit is, to start with, this is the hard spot. This is a little bit too much here. I'm going to just go over to the sanding bench and just remove some of that material with the carbide block. Now with that little bit of material, that should let this sit further down and close up some of the gap that we have. Again, we're going to be going back and forth here probably 50 times, always picking out the hard spots so this can just eventually sink down into find its own level. Now I'm only setting this edge in right now. I just tack glued the pieces in oversized. And they'll still have to be trimmed in, and I'm going to have to make a little filler for in here. Now I can take all this oversized edge off, even though I'm going to have to do the final fit on this after the cowling hold down is in, because once you put the hold down in, it compresses everything down and makes it nice and solid. Then we can get the final edge. But right now, I want to have these edges all done with the 64th or 32nd plywood. Now in this case, we got to fill in a little more of a gap. We'll just use a piece of 32nd. Now I need that last little piece cut out, and then I'll set up my little plywood edge here. Now this, I just had a piece of spruce that just happened to fit right in there. Holding this down, just shape it. I'll tack glue it in and make a permanent seam, and then just roughly sand it in. And once this is sanded in, this acts as a nice reinforcement here, even though we're going to trim this away. It gives us a nice reinforcement, so when we put the pressure on the, whoop, as we throw the cowl on the floor, this part here will stay rigid, because we're going to obviously have to cut some holes out here for airflow. So these little, whether you make them out of 64th, 32nd, or in this case spruce, having that reinforcement in there, that's a real important thing, I think. Now for now, we're getting this roughed in, but again, all of these final fits, all these final shapes have to come when the cowl hold downs are actually in position and holding this tight, because otherwise we're moving this is moving, and we can never get these joints and edges just right. But for right now, that's a good start. Now this is the very, very time-consuming part of this. Once I have the edges, I have this dimension relatively close. Now what I'm looking for is hard spots. And I'm just pretending that I'm going to have the cowling mount on here. Let's see how we can do this. And I'm looking for the hard spot. Now right here is the hard spot. We're at the first spot that it hits. And I'm going to do this in a very meticulous, time-consuming way. Just constantly be shaving away the high spot until each time this is going to get closer and closer, and ultimately have the fit that I'll be happy with. And then, and I guess we're not going to do it in this session, the next step on this is going to be to make up the cowl mounts. Now sometimes it seems like this part of it takes forever. Sometimes it does. But if you just keep taking small amounts off, you eventually wind up with a fit that's probably the thickness of a piece of sandpaper that's going to wind up, and we'll just go back and forth and fit this, just the thickness of the paint that'll be on all these edges. Now you can see I'm just pretending my hand is the cowl fit. And little by little by little, this is going to take, I'm guessing, a couple hours of just picking away at the high spot, and I'll take my time doing it. Now one of the neatest little ways to get the nose ring to be a perfect fit, I'm just taking a piece of 64th plywood, using it for a spacer. And I can see I have more clearance on this side than on that side, so what I'm going to do, what I'm going to try to do, since this is just tacking it in, and I'm using this just to get the fit. And then I can fill, once this kicks, I'm going to hold this back. Once this kicks, I can just fill that gap with glue. Now this little gap, we know that side's perfect. We know all our edges here. We can just fill this with thick CA first, because I don't want it to seep in and seal the cowling. And in this case, I'm just gonna make sure I'm not gluing the cowling in place. This side is a lot tighter, but it's the same technology, the same idea. And that'll make the nose ring just a little bit stronger, so. And once that kicks off, we'll sand this in and cut this all away. Now that's one way to get an absolutely perfect fit up around the nose ring with very little work. And that fills our gap. Carefully trim all this away, and that'll reinforce our nose ring even more. Now once I got that roughed away, by the way, that was one of the tips, one of the little tricks we learned from during the visit of Sergei Belko when he was here from the Ukraine. And when that's all trimmed off and sanded off, boy, will that be a nice tight fit. That is such a good trick, because it's almost impossible to get two flexible surfaces to line up. Yet if you get one of them to line up and use that for a back, that just works so well. You do that once and you'll never do it any other way. Now again, we got some of these things that we made up earlier. Just come in very handy to get this edge back. Obviously the final little fit has to be with the spinner on and the cowling bolted in place, but we're just trying to rough it out now. Get a rough fit. And since we're going to use this front as a cowl hold down, any strength we can put in there, definitely going to work to our advantage. Now if you look real close at that fit, for a rough fit, boy, I think that's going to work out just great. Now to get that final fit, of course, everything's got to be bolted in place, but right now I can see any high spots up here, and I can just get rid of the high spots very conveniently before we even do the cowl mount. It's too late today to start the cowl mounts. That's going to be an involved operation with a lot of hand fitting. But this certainly is a good starting point. And getting all these edges and fits the way I would be happy with them. Well, now this is about all we're going to get done today. I think I can thin these sides out too, because it's Christmas time, and you bet we got more presents to shop for, wrap for. I love Christmas. Why am I complaining? We know we have a really nice fit up front here. We know we have a good fit around the edges, and now all I want to do is trim this back to about 3/16 of an inch or so. I'm just going to grind it out up to that point, and that'll leave me a nice hard spruce bar down on each edge. So when this gets clamped together, I'll be clamping something nice and solid. Now, I think one of the things you can get off of the DVDs, and by the way, I trimmed this down to about 3/16 of an inch, taking a sandpaper and I'm getting inside to make a nice radius, and I'll just drip some more thin CA in there to make what amounts to be a fillet. Again, inside the cowling, I like to have everything as smooth as possible also to get the airflow moving as well as it can. Especially when we go down to Texas or in the hot weather of Muncie. And one of the things I think really is valuable that I find, and I even use it myself, is the sequence of doing things like this cowling. If you get the sequence right, and I'll just give you a quick example. I remember, well, people working in a shop, and they'd get to this point, and what they'd want to do is cut the hole for the engine. And they'd get it real nice, then they'd put the mount on, and it would just be off just a 64th. And it just made it a lot, not as nice as it could be for the same amount of work. And the objective here is to use less work to make it either just as nice or even nicer. Now I'm just trying to get some of these rough edges out of here, only because I'm going to wind up getting a splinter if I don't. And we really don't even have to paint in here because the material obviously is fuel proof already. Any paint we put in here is just cosmetic. And I think tomorrow, we're going to kind of dedicate tomorrow to getting a cowl mount in. Getting that cowl mount in. If we can get that in tomorrow, we'll really be in great shape. Now, one other thing I want to go through before we end this session. We got our Warbirds magazine, and oh, there are some great pictures. Now, I always, absolutely always, look forward to reading my Warbird magazines, because a lot of times I'm just running a little short on inspiration, and I need to just come up with something, and they never disappoint me. Now, I know Les will be looking at this sooner or later. One of the features this month, the Sky Raider, one of Les's favorite planes, one of the ones. He spent a lot of time with Sky Raiders when he was in Vietnam. Les, of course, has moved to Centerville, Texas. He's got his own flying area right on his own property. A guy couldn't be... Rich Oliver does too. It just couldn't be any luckier than that. And there is a lot of detail, just a tremendous amount of detail up on the nose from the canopy forward on a Sky Raider. And of course the Warbird books, they always have such great photography, great color photography. I often wonder how something like this would look on a like on a Cardinal or an Impact or something. Anyway, always ideas, always something to get you motivated. And of course I got a special little place in my heart for these AT6 types, because I did get that real neat ride. I actually have video of me doing loops with it. The guy actually can you believe he let me fly it? Anyway, I love having that video too. Now I have to ask Bill Rutherford, because Bill had a Hurricane on the airport where his shop is, and this is the one from the Lone Star Museum. Look at a big scoop on the bottom. And I'm wondering if this is the one Bill had he had gotten some video and some pictures of. He hasn't sent it to me yet. Look at the nose detail, a spinner in the exhaust. The magazine's worth this one picture alone, a black B-25 with early markings. Dedicated to the Doolittle Raiders. Why can't they just morph in my picture in the cockpit here? Doolittle Raiders, special delivery. I noticed the British markings on this guy. And of course the legendary Bearcat. Gear down. Oh, Al would love that. If you ever modeled one of these, having that one with big orange stripe would probably look good in maneuvers too. A lot of nice nose detail there. P40, of course. Now I got to read this article, but apparently, if you read it, I just looked at it real quick. They're making a remake of the Dam Busters, and can you imagine the footage with special effects they can have in there now? And if they make a remake of the Dam Busters, by the way, the original one has a lot of good footage too. They still have these flyable. I can picture Steven Spielberg, the special effects they could have on that. Oh my God, would that be awesome. And of course, the G-Fire Corsair. And they have this section now from time to time, before there were Warbirds, of right after World War II. Some of these guys that took these up and made them private planes, and just unbelievable. Very good magazine. That's funny, I was watching another Ferrari show. I didn't get it on tape, I just caught it at the end. And they were asking one of the guys that had just paid $2 million for a Ferrari, did he have anything better to spend his money on? And the guy said, oh no. And there's a lesson there. Anyway, the things we spend our life on, we really truly enjoyed them. Anyway, and tomorrow we're going to try to get some cowl mounts in that plane. Now, believe it or not, even though it's freezing cold out here, it's really not a bad day. It's still below freezing, but there's no wind blowing. So for us, this is really not a bad day. And what I was going to do is I'm going to spend the morning getting rid of some of the leaves, because we have our last leaf pickup in town. Then I'm going to get down there and figure out how I want to do these cowl mounts. Boy, in cold weather like this, and Karen's got a pot of coffee on already, as soon as I come in from leaf raking, boy oh boy, that coffee is going to taste great. Now, we're not going to make the cowl mounts a whole lot different than we did on an Ovanta for a few reasons. Number one, they work exactly perfectly, didn't fail in service. And so whenever I have something that's pretty successful and relatively straightforward to do, I like to use it over and over again. And what I thought would be a good idea is, and I can do this off camera, I'm going to pull this apart, just re-wet it, and put it back in the little mold, let that sit, because we don't have a whole day here. We're dealing with only about half of what a normal session would be. But I can get that up by a heating vent, let it sit there another day before we pull it apart. And that was the way Joe had suggested trying it. We're going to see how that works. But in the meantime, I want to do those cowl mounts. Just got to get the plywood out. Now the plan is to put a mount across here, and this is the way we pretty much did the Testarossa. 2 screws, one on each side. The idea of that is a redundancy. If one screw loosens up and falls out, the cowling doesn't fly out and hit somebody. And also a pin in the front, so that when the cowl goes on, the pin locks in place and the 2 screws hold it down. And that leaves the most amount of room in the back here for airflow, mufflers, maintenance. Now the trick is to get this piece in parallel to this piece and lined up, so that when we put this together, we can drill the holes right in place, go right through both pieces of plywood, put the side supports in, and cut the middle out. Now if you try to put little pieces on each side, the problem is one goes in, one goes up, one goes down, no matter how careful you are. This method of just putting one bar in each side and then taking out the middle has always worked real well for us. Now remember, we also need, because this is a rear exhaust engine, the maximum airflow going through there. And I think this way, because it's worked so well on an Avant, I have a lot of confidence we'll be able to replicate this, and it'll be bulletproof, and it'll meet all the requirements we want for doing the maintenance on this plane over what we hope is going to be a very long life. Now the first step is to figure out where we want to make this mount. And again, the biggest thing I think you can benefit from the DVD is pretty much the sequence of doing this. Now, I want to see myself, and I usually do this with hands on. Where would these bolts be the most effective? If I put them way back here, see, we have plenty of support here, but I don't know, since we're going to cut a lot of this out for airflow, I don't know. So if I get them up in the corner here, it's going to be a problem. I'm just thinking this is not going to be solid. This is going to want to dance around. So I think pretty much right in the middle of the 2 sides is where this would be the most effective, because what it does, as you press down here, this catches and puts a down force into this and helps lock the pin in. So I think if we just work off pretty much, and doesn't have to be measured, but right about in the middle of this is where this is the most effective. So step 1, I just want to take and strip off a piece that's a little bit wider than a blind nut, just a hair wider than a blind nut. And get a nice accurate fitting. Now what this does, once I cut this piece out, get it trued out, by putting it in this way, I'm maintaining 90 degrees, so when the cowl comes down, these should sandwich and pinch without being on an angle or putting some kind of a crazy stress in. Again, I've really worked on the developing how to do this step by step, and I think this will really help anybody trying to do some cowl mounts if they just follow it step by step. And all I do is just, and I don't want to put any pressure on it. I don't want it to spread the fuselage or to, I just want it to be a nice press fit. Now I want to make sure I have this perfectly flat, perfectly parallel, and that looks like that's right on the money. Now once that glue sets, I want to make sure this isn't sticking up or that it's on any kind of an angle. Again, if this was sticking up, we'd lose our edge on the cowl. Now that feels pretty good. Now it also is real handy, this little reinforcement piece that we put on here is going to reinforce the cowl mount. Otherwise this area would be spread right on a very narrow area. This acts like a doubler here, spreads out the load quite a bit. It's like free lunch. Now the next step is to get a center line on this, and I've already measured out the center so I can get pretty close. I hope pretty close anyway. And I want to carry that line right across, for right now, right onto the fuselage side by just a little bit, just so it marks when we go to drill a hole. It will be on center, hopefully. Right there is where we want it to be. Now the next step, before I do any drilling or filing or anything, is I want to get a little triangular support front and back. But I'm not going to glue the front ones on because it'll be easier to get the blind nut in and then glue this on. But I can get the two back ones in, and I'll make a little pattern out of paper and then fill it in, little triangle supports. Because I don't want this, once I cut the center piece out, this piece is going to be very weak and vulnerable. This little triangle piece will help maintain that integrity and that nice flat. So when these two surfaces come together, they're mating. They're not coming together like on two crooked planes. Now I had to make a little relief for the doubler, but this is nice because it connects into the double, it triangulates everything. I'm going to make the same piece on this side and then soak this whole area with thin CA several times, because this really is something that if it breaks after you have a finish on the plane, it's really hard to get anything to stick to where it's already had dope on it. You're dealing with raw wood. That glue joint now is many times stronger. So to get these in on raw wood and soak them all with thin CA, then we can go on to the next step. Now I want to be sure, before I go on to the next step, this is a perfectly flat surface. The doublers that we used here really worked out well. That's going to add a lot of strength with just the tiniest of weight penalties. Now the reason for leaving the front ones out is because I need to get in there after this is drilled and put a blind nut underneath here. It'll just make getting the blind nut in there just a tad easier. Now I want to just tape the cowling in place as the next step. Now what's important is we're going to pick up, this is why we needed these cowl fits to be tight, because if this was a 64th forward or back, none of this would line up. It would be a problem. We need to have this in a relatively accurate spot before we can transpose this. Now I know exactly where it is because I've got the little line off the end of the fuselage here, and I've got the little line there. So now what I can do is just connect those two, and that'll be the line that runs down the center of the cowl mount. And that lets me pick up that line off the fuselage side and just connect it with a line. Now I know where that line is on the top. That's my center line. So now I can transpose that line down onto the cowl. Now I can imagine there's a lot of other ways to do this that work, but this is a way that works pretty well for me. Now I know that's where the center line is. Now I'm going to create, and on this side I'm going to use hard normal plywood, not light ply, because right here what's going to happen, the bolts are going to tend to crush the light ply, and in time it wears out. It's worth the extra gram or so just to have real plywood in there. This is now my center line to work with. And you can see how I've gotten a center line off the fuselage onto this piece and down here, so I can put that bar right across there in exactly the right spot. Now we got our piece of 1/8 inch light ply. It's the same thickness. We want to get it on center. And I can see I'm going to have to put a little curve in the end of this because I'm going to have to make some little notches that go up under here. But I want to see how, well, I can start over length and then just work my way in. Now what this will be, each one of these edges will have a little curve, and I'll have to relieve it so it goes underneath this piece of plywood, because that edge helps retain this while we're working on it, and of course in the final part. Now see, once I get the little curve on one side, that slides up under there, and now it gives me this fitting, the side, where this is going to be, and I can look right at the joint. See how much of this has to get trimmed off, and then this side will have to be the same curve, so I can slide it up under there and lock it in place. I need to have that curve on both sides and a tight fit that it just slides right under there. And the next step, once that piece is glued in, true this edge up. Now this was a little trickier than I thought it would be. We know where this dimension is, but if I put, as I put the bolts further and further in from the side, these two little mounts turn into diving boards. So I'm trying to crowd it and get it off as far as I can. And the way I did it, I looked from the top what a blind nut would look like, and I think we're real close to having it right now. Because I didn't want to see these holes from the side, if possible. So I'm making a compromise of roughly 3/8 of an inch in from the side. And of course these will get drilled on a drill press so that they're 90 degrees, and they should go right down through in one cut. They should go right down through the plywood on both sides. Of course that's the theory, and the reality we don't know. What I'm hoping I'm going to be able to drill these and get a good 90 degree on it. I want to make sure I got the cowl taped in 2 spots so it's perfectly aligned. Again, if these are not 90 degrees, it's never going to line up the way I would be happy with it anyway. And we got them right on the money, and I think we're right at the right spot here. Now the part I got to look at, Next step is to open these holes up to 135 and get the blind nuts in there. Now before we even think about it, this is the step I always encourage people to do before we get any thin CA around these blind nuts. It takes 1 second to do that, and cheap insurance that you're not going to have to pull that blind nut out and replace it. Now this is one of the reasons we oil that blind nut. I tighten this up, of course, with a couple of washers. Pull the blind nut up into position, then I can smear some CA around it without having that fear that what's going to happen is I'm going to lock this in place. And I can remember many times, back in the old, well, not the old days, wasn't that long ago. And what would happen is you put that blind nut in and go to take the screw out, and you, geez, when are we going to learn not to do this? Anyway, I always want to put the blind nuts in. Before I put the front little triangle on there is the last piece before I cut this apart. And it's a very simple reason. It's easy to get in there and glue the blind nuts now, where it would normally be relatively difficult. And the last thing we have to deal with is making up the two little triangle pieces for the front, shortening the screws, just so every time I put the cowl on and off I don't have to deal with threading in a foot of screw. Make sure this is perfectly flat. Now see how easy it is to get in there and put a nice layer of glue all on it, all those inside areas. That's the reason I don't put that little front piece on until the very end. Now once I know everything is flat here, I'm going to just cut this middle piece right out. It has served to keep everything in alignment and everything nice and straight, 90 degrees. But basically from this point on we're done with it. All we need are the two little diving boards that are holding on the blind nuts. So it's right up here. We only need enough of this material that we can hold the blind nut in place, and everything beyond that is just, right now, it's just extra. And we're looking to get as much air going through here as possible, so the way this worked out, I don't want to have anything, any obstruction that I don't really need in here. But I hope this system works as well for you as it has for me over the years. It's kind of step 1, step 2, step 3. And I doubt that there's any easier way to get those little pieces to be in real good alignment. I don't know that there's an easier way to do it. If there is, now that worked out just about as sweet as possible. Now the last thing, and that really gives us some redundancy, again, if one of the bolts got loose or whatever. I always put a pin up in the nose ring. Now this pin needs to be on just a slight angle up, or else you can't snake the cowl in there. If you put it at a 90-degree angle, what happens is you just can't get it in that last little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carefully mark out where I want it, take the Dremel tool and drill for an 1/8 inch piece of music wire that just goes right, maybe on a 10-degree angle up, not straight with the motor mounts, and then just have a little piece of it. It's going to stick out of the cowling by, less than the thickness of a nose ring. Now the problem is, in the past, and John DeTavio used to do this, he'd put a bolt in here. And what happened, if that bolt starts backing its way out, it rubs on a spinner back plate, and it's another possible problem. This way, you eliminate that as one of the possible problems. And all that pin is there for is to keep this from going side to side or maneuver around. These, actually, we probably could get away with it without even having it. These two are holding it plenty tight. But we like to have redundancy systems. Now for me, it's always easier to just run a Dremel tool with a bit instead of a drill. A drill tends to crack the plywood. Now I can take this apart and just get my little piece of music wire, radius off the front of it so it'll tend to find its way in there when we go to push it in. I want that area where we're going to be gluing to the carbon to be plenty rough, because this will be one of the structural pieces that right now, while the part has never had oil or grease or wax on it, we should be able to get a real nice bond. But again, that pin has to go on a very slight angle, and it took me so long to figure that out. Now that piece of music wire should have a little bit of a radius on the front, and I'm going to roughen it up on the part that's going to sit in the cowling so that the glue gets a good bite. Now another little tip that helps is you just take a countersink this hole, this side, just enough, and take the top piece of the pin and just take the edge off it so it's got a little less edge on top. And what I'm looking for is this little snap action that when I get down, because the motor will be in place when I do this, that this last little bit, it just goes snap. And it takes a little bit of radius in the ring and a little bit of knocking the edge off the pin. But you can see what's happened now. Well, I didn't put the bolts in. This is solid as a rock up here. This will be solid here. And that, once we get the bolts in here and dress off that cosmetically, I just want to make sure this is a nice slide fit in and out without a problem, and that it locks the front end the way it's supposed to. Now of course this has served its purpose now. We can trim away basically the same amount, because all we need are these little ears, and then we're going to try to put little pieces in the corner to reinforce this. But for right now, this is going to be this is working out pretty well. But that piece, using this system where that piece keeps you in alignment, boy, that saves so much work. Now, there's still a couple of steps left to do on this, but it's the end of this session. We have to do our walking. And it looks like it's going to snow, so we want to get that done early in the day. But I think for right now, I need to put the little aluminum tubes on here, and of course cut all the holes for the engine mount. That'll be another day of work. But I think we really have this part of it. This part, I'm about as happy as I've ever been with a cowling with that. I think that's going to work out just great for us. And we're going to try right now to beat the weather. We beat the snow so far. I don't see any snow, baby, but
it's 30 degrees.
Who said it's 30? Wow. Who said there are no Eskimos in Rutherford? Anyway, when it's like this, there's only a few people out here. I can picture Rich Oliver and Bill Rutherford in Houston going, "Cold? What's cold? What's cold, baby?
It's cold.
Put the bathing suit on. Let's go in a pool."
Yeah.
Forget it. There's 1,000 geese over there. Now normally when we walk there aren't any geese.
They're pooping all over the grass.
All of a sudden we're in geese heaven here in Canada. Ken Clapson's herd of geese. Go fly up to Alberta, baby. Check this out. Karen's walking. This is my new buddy. Hey. Come on. Come on. My new buddy. Peanut boy. You're not afraid of me, are you? Yeah, you're afraid of me, you bum. Hiding behind a fence. I give him the best, choicest peanuts in New Jersey. Hey. Come on. Come on, Buzz Brodak says feed the squirrels. This little guy. Now we got a black guy up at the other end of the field. I haven't seen him yet today. But whenever we're here, our latest thing is we bring peanuts and feed the squirrels. We got 2 or 3 of them, pretty much like this guy, friendly. As soon as they see us coming, they know we're suckers. They run right over, get the peanuts, and then leave us. Now this is funny. Karen and I are walking. He's waiting for us.
Yeah, he is.
You think he knows we're suckers? Hey!
Not we, baby, you.
Hey! Hey!
Here comes Wendy.
Here comes that dopey Wendy, ready to feed me peanuts. Hey! You give a blind squirrel long enough and he'll find all the peanuts in Bergen County. Hey! When I was a kid I had a pet squirrel, not like this guy though. We had him since he was a baby, so he was very friendly. Hey! You got a cute face, you know. You ever been to Brodak's? Look at this guy. Eating Wendy peanuts. Now this is all black squirrel. We feed him too. We're not prejudiced. Come on. Come on, it's Wendy. Come on. Come on. This is our black squirrel. Hey, this is costing me a fortune. Look at this guy. He takes a peanut and he runs up the tree. I'm not sure about this black squirrel. Look at him, he eats it up on a tree. Very entertaining though while we're walking here every day. Now the question is, are there Eskimos in Rutherford? Well, as we get home to some more Spitfire pictures, and obviously this is the one one of the ones Joe and I both like. The red stripe on silver that always shows up so well. And Karen just yelled down a minute ago, it's starting to snow out there, of all things. Oh, I love having these photos, especially doing my daily, look at that rudder, that pointed rudder. My daily supply of email that I need to do because of the business, and this just really, really is a nice little break from the day. And of course, all photos from Rich Warbird, who's been giving us a steady diet of these, and we hope we're giving him a steady diet of devotion and dedication to the RAF here. There's that 5-bladed prop. Oh my God. The Razorback one. Not the pointed rudder that I really do like. But thanks to Joe's pictures and to Rich Wallbridge's pictures, we know there are several that are silver and have the red stripe. And that probably really would make a good stunt paint job. That is my favorite, the pointy rudder. By the way, may not know this, one of the little facts. In the door, see the thing that looks like it's going from corner to corner? It's an axe. And it's there for a reason. If you crash, it lets you take the axe and cut your way out of the airplane. That really is what it's there for. It's an axe. The guy down in Houston was telling us that little fact. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. There's the I-beamer right there. Snaggletooth. Now a lot of people don't realize those shark mouths appear on virtually every World War II Warbird at one time or another. They actually appeared on some of the B-25s, some of the A-26s, P-40s of course, and Spitfires. Spitfires. Now that can be prototypical if you're a shark mouth guy, which is one of the things I did for the I-beamer, and I thought that was pretty nice. Good view of some of the camo here, late model camo of course. The early model camo, the blue and green, was when they were basically fighting the Battle of Britain over land, and when it went to this shade of, I guess, blue and green, that designates it was later in the war or after the war when they were fighting over water. Boy, there's a picture, huh? Oh, look, how did they get that jet in the background? That. Anyway, as we always do, special thanks to Rich Warbird for forwarding these and sharing them with us. Get a good look at how the canopy slides back here. In those rails right where the pilot's shoulder is, and the bulletproof glass front. Oh, look at this dude sleeping in the shade over here, using a Spitfire for a shade. For shade. Ooh, yes. Well, Rich, we really do appreciate these pictures, and boy, I'll tell you, they make my day complete. A lot of this email stuff is relatively redundant and boring, but getting these pictures from you every day, just every other day or whatever, really adds a nice dimension to my day. Thank you very much. And we'll share them on the video. We have a real good challenge in front of us. And the challenge is two things. I want to get as many or all of the air openings, the venting air openings, exhaust openings on this. That's challenge one, and we'll work on that. But today is a very, very special day. One of the things Karen and I really do enjoy is opera, of course, and tonight we're going, and it's the hardest thing in the world to get these tickets, the Andrea Bocelli concert in Izod. And so, as you can imagine, we're both excited about it, and it's actually our Christmas present to each other to have the tickets. But anyway, aside from good music, something maybe you do or don't enjoy, and by the way, when Kent Tyser and Shelley were here, we took them to the opera. We took Midgley and Sharon to the opera too, and they didn't think they'd enjoy it. I think they did. Anyway, of course, Kent was wearing his NASCAR shirt. It was funny. Anyway, we're up to this point, and this is a critical part of this. Let me explain this in a couple of a little baby storyboard here, because this is something you think would take just the minimum amount of time. It really doesn't. Now, one of the things we got to keep in mind here, and it should be easy, but should be and is two totally different things. One of the very easy mistakes to make when you make a cowling, and especially if you're making it in the middle of the winter, is to put too small of an area here to choke the engine that you can't get your finger in there conveniently, and some kind of an air intake hole. These are the things we have to consider now, because we obviously don't have a clear picture in our mind. We haven't seen this in 3 dimensions. And we need to have an outlet hole in the back that's going to serve two purposes. It's going to let the exhaust pipe or pipes come through, and it's also going to be our air. Air is going to go in here, cool air, and out here is going to come expanded. Now when air heats up, it expands hot air. Now the two mistakes to avoid, like the plague on this, and this really is something you can get yourself in trouble with. If you make this hole up here way too small, let's just make a little example of it, or this hole smaller than this hole, what happens is the air goes in, and because it can't get out, it stagnates up here, especially with a rear exhaust engine that's trying to get rid of all this heat that's in the back of the engine. Remember, a rear exhaust engine, a lot more difficult to cool a rear exhaust engine than a side exhaust, for the simple reason is the hottest part of the engine is right where the header meets the engine, and this area here, if you don't have adequate cooling, it can really be a problem. Now my answer to this, or hopefully my answer is going to be, I'm going to try to carefully get an intake that's big enough, possibly around the head, which is another hot area, and the glow plug, so I can get plenty of air flowing in. But also, even more important, is a big enough hole that air can flow out. Now, in the other Spitfires, we used a little bit different system that I don't know if we're going to be able to use here, is we had side outlets. Now, the problem with side outlets is they're not scale, and I don't know if we're going to still be able to use them, want to use them, because I have to see how big this hole is going to wind up. But if we can get some side outlets in here, well, obviously that's going to help the airflow. Now, and again, we want to be able to fly this plane under a wide range of conditions, especially in Texas where it's really hot. One of our goals is to have this plane ready to fly in Texas. And if you have a plane that you can only fly in relatively cool weather, I'm not so sure you don't cheat yourself somehow there. But we want to keep this in mind. In an ideal world, this hole would be 6 times bigger than this hole. That's an ideal world. This is not an ideal world. And sometimes you have to settle for 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 or something. But it would be nice, and again, we have a very aerodynamic nose, as opposed to a nose that's got a big scoop. Sometimes there's a big scoop on the front, and it just acts like an air dam and blows the air all over the place. We're nice and clean. We should be able to get the air to flow right in and right out in a very, very efficient way. And I hope, well, obviously I'm hoping this is going to be as good as it gets, and that we're going to cover ourselves for a wide range, a very wide range of weather conditions. So the other day we got all the rough cowl fits. I got these little aluminum tubes in late last night, just to protect around the edge of the bolts. Same as we did on a tip weight box and on basically anywhere there's a screw. I should say the bolts to the, this needs a little oil on it. Boy, I'm glad I put oil on this, because boy, if once you wind up with some CA in those bolt holes, oy. This worked out real well. The pin in the front seems to be a nice tight fit. Now the next step on this, I just want to put the engine in, and I want to start laying out where these holes are going to be. First step, with the engine in place, I can get the side view. I want these to stick out ever so slightly, at least 1/4 of an inch, so we don't get oil. And what's one of the nice things about a Novanta setup, absolutely no oil on a plane. I also want to make sure I have plenty of clearance around the head, plenty of room to choke it. Again, and this looks like the beauty of having a wider fuselage. Be no problem putting any kind of fuel filters, wider tanks, thicker tanks. We're going to have a lot of choices in this nose system when we're done with this. Now we can just look at the side view here and get some of the dimensions before we even start to cut holes. I can see I've got the right amount of exhaust sticking out, and I can plot front to back where the head of the motor is going to stick out. And what I can do is just get how far back this hole is going to go and how far forward by looking down. And I need to have the hole this far forward so I can choke the engine, and this far back so that we get some air flowing around the back. And most important thing is to get the back of this engine cooled. Okay, now we have some idea of how far back that's going to go, how far forward, and what we need to figure out is I need to go get my hole template, figure out how big the head of the motor is, how big the venturi is, and then kind of do an interpolation here to connect them. Now the best way to do this is, because this is not going to be a round hole, is to interpolate, is make it a little smaller than it has to be to begin with. That's about the size it really needs to be. Well, we'll start, it's not going to be, you know, right there. I'll lay it out in this dimension, now knowing that it's going to have interference on all sides, and I'm going to have to start cutting the side, because I don't want to have a big hole and it's way off to one side. So I need to do that, and up around the venturi, I need to allow for the air filter, of course, right around 13/16. So I can lay these two, just roughly lay them out with a pen. This is just a bit on the undersize because I want to start fitting it, and I want to try to get it as accurate as possible. But this is a good starting point. Now I've got to obviously connect the dots here. Now when I'm going to rough out the holes, a burr that comes to a point is usually the best way to do this. And I'd always rough them out undersize rather than have a big gaping hole and then I have to find some way of dealing with that. Now we know these are going to be undersized, but when I put this back in place, I'm going to see where I have a hard area, a hard spot to work off. And then I'm just going to be relieving a hard spot, relieving a hard spot, relieving it until I see how much of this actually has to come off. Now my first interference is right in the front of the head when I go to snap this on. So I've gone to the next bigger size hole and just moved it forward just a little bit, so I got most of the cut on the front. And by the way, I don't know if I ever showed this on. Let me show this. What I do to save time on changing bits, I have this. This came from Costco for $16. This was a Home Depot one after Christmas for $28, and I got the RotoZip for. This is what I use really for heavy duty work. But what's nice is I have a different bit in each one, and as I'm working, I can just go from the burr to the sander to the cutoff wheel and never have to change bits. And then of course my little thing here with some of the bits that I use and the ones that I have extras of. Where the hell are they? Drawers full of the old ones that when I need them. So having this organized, and if you think what I got up here is less than $100 for the whole thing, and in the course of building a plane it probably saved me changing a bit 100 times. Now here's one of the things I'm trying to avoid is making this hole either offset or way too big. So as I slide this on, I want the pin to catch as he drops it. And I'm really taking my time trying to do this so I can find what I'm looking for is the spot where it hits, and you can see it hits right up here. So obviously, and I'll just go to the next bigger diameter and move it forward ever so slightly. It's like I just have this a little bit offset. It needs to come down maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Now I always try to do this in little bites, not in a big giant amount all at once. Let me get this on center, and I know I've got to offset it. And then what I'll do is I'll just take the grinder and grind out the pen line. And boy, I've seen some cowlings where and I've made a few of them too. I've made a lot. Where you go to put this on and it's like this big giant hole, and then you go, oh, it looks awful. You'd like it to look a little more aircraft-like. So now once we grind that, we should be real close. Now we've got this as close as it's going to get because we're hitting the exhaust pipes now. So what I need to do now is let's lay out. See, what I'm doing is as this goes down into place, wherever it starts to hit, it's going to hit here, then it's going to hit here, maybe up here, and I want to get the minimum holes that I need to clear these items. And then I can open up the holes, connect the dots, do whatever I need to do to make this shape what I have in my mind's eye right now, and it looks like it's going to work out real well. But this hole is going to have to be a lot larger than the pipes themselves because this is part of our air outlet system. Step one, I'll lay out my center line again with tape, and then I'll lay out how far forward this goes, how far back, add quite a bit to the dimension because I want to have some variation in what header, if I want to move that pipe back or forward, or use the one pipe, the double pipe, or maybe one with three. Who knows what we're going to come up with eventually. But this hole is also going to serve as the air outlet hole, same as on the Novanta, and that worked well. So just laying it out right now, same way as I've laid this hole out. Now by making this hole just a little bit oversized, and it's actually bigger than the Novanta hole by about 3/8 of an inch long and about 1/8 of an inch wide, so we know that'll be more than enough air we're going to get through there. It's also going to allow us to position these, change header lengths, sizes, shapes, and I want to have that ability in case we come up with some different muffling system. We want to make something that totally different than this, something that connects with a rubber coupler, and it's like the mufflers that are on a double stars, but we want to have a lot of choices here. And this, I think I'll do this the same way I cut out the front piece. Just cut this out, trim it. I think this is going to be exactly what we need. Now here's where we're having some of these little sanding tools, very high tech. Some of that Bernie Trent sandpaper. I want to dress these off as I go because two things. I don't want to get a carbon fiber splinter. I got one the other day and it's still bothering me. And they can be nasty. Especially if you get it up under your fingernail. Alright, ready to fit this up. Next step. Okay, after looking at the interference, I can see I've still got interference on the cylinder itself, and I never took into account, my own fault, that not the cylinder head, but the fins on the engine, and we're going to go down past the first or second fin. We've got to go down about another 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. It's maybe 1/8 of an inch bigger in diameter than the head itself, so still need to open this up. And I'm guessing we're hitting up here, so I ought to slide that hole just a little bit further forward. And we'll repeat that just like we did on the previous time. And I think the outlet is going to be fine right now. That's going to be plenty big of an air outlet. It's going to give us a lot of choices in what we can do back here in terms of mufflers. And we're also going to have to finish inside this area. And I'm thinking of some of the other things we possibly can do here. But finish inside this area, and or paint it black or silver or zinc chromate or something. But I definitely, what I want to have is that from the side view, I don't want to see that this is, I don't want to see this hole. When a plane is sitting on its feet, you will not see that hole. And we should get plenty of air going through there, especially if we're in hot weather. And once we go to this line, that should fit down, totally fit down over the engine. Now we're getting down to where the last little bit has to be fit. And we should be able to, this will give us a chance to get this cowling actually bolted in place and then finalize all these holes. And this is a time of year when I always say to myself, I don't want to make a winter cowling. A winter cowling is you sit here and say, I'll never have to choke the engine, I'll put a Q-tip in there, and I'll never need an air exhaust, I'm never going to fly if it's hot out. Well, yeah, and I've done it. And then after this is all painted, then I've opened up the holes and done things. Oh, I'm not falling for that trick this year. Now the next thing is to open up this hole big enough that I can conveniently get in there and choke it. See, my finger, then this isn't that I should be using. There's no way. And there's no way I'm going to conveniently get an air filter on there. So this has to be open, but now I'm able to get it centered. I can look right down and I can hopefully get this centered very nicely. A little work on opening that up. I want to be sure my biggest finger fits in there conveniently. And of course the air filter. Now that looks like it's just about right in terms of being able to choke it. Being able to put some layers of nylon pantyhose on there if I have to. Now this is where we're doing ice shavings. I can see I'm missing a little bit of clearance on one side. In other words, I got this just a tad offset, maybe a 64th of an inch. So I put the pen line on one side with the template, and now I'll grind off the side that's too tight. Everything I'm going to do now is just thicknesses of pen lines. Now I want to connect, and I've made the 2 dots where that part connects, so I can get this pretty accurate, I think. And always getting this shape. Now I could have left this piece in, maybe, I don't know. It just looked like it's going to get very brittle there, and just going to be one of the things I'm going to regret I did. So this, now I know I can choke this. I know I have enough clearance around the head. This area here then becomes what I hope is 1/6 of this area. Now dressing this off, of course, from this point on, instead of using a Dremel tool, we'll just use our sanding Brodak epoxy bottles. But see, I can't start with this shape because I want to make sure I've got all my bases covered, and then I just connect the dots. And again, that's been a good way for me to do it. Now I can go back, put the bolts in the cowling, and make sure I don't have any interference on anything here that's going to be a problem. And I think when I look at this from the front and from the side, the main thing from the side, I don't want to see, I'm trying to see none of these holes when the plane is on its feet. That's one of my requirements, or one of my... Now after looking at this from exactly the front, I can see I've got one side ever so slightly less of a curve than the other side. Now what I thought I'd do here is just lay this out with tape and then go make a final decision. And here's the problem with this. Now we're doing ice shavings. I don't want to do this with the Dremel tool. I want to do this last little bit. I don't want anything getting so close to the engine that we're going to have a heating problem. I want to say at least have the clearance around here that it's equal, because I want this to act like a scoop to force air in there. And this is a part of it that's probably going to take maybe more than an hour, as I'm going to very carefully measure the fit around the engine. At no point do I want the engine within an 1/8 inch of the cowling, because I don't want to melt the paint. I don't want to have a problem in terms of melting the paint. And I've had on the original Spitfire, the original I-beamer, if you remember, I had put in a high-rise header at the last minute. The header was very close to the paint. On the first time I ran the engine, blisters all over the paint. So again, these are tricks. It's a shame when you fall for them, and I've fallen for most of them, or maybe all of them. But when you can pass them on, it seems like at least you get something, some satisfaction out of not having to do it over and over again. Now I'm going to go little by little on this, and once I'm satisfied with this shape, then we move on to the next step. But I don't want to compromise this. See, now this is why I think it's important to have the cowling made out of, and we don't make all of them, of course, since we're doing this just basically for our own entertainment. We can use different material from time to time. But the advantage of this right now being made out of carbon fiber, having these spruce reinforcements, is once we take all this material out, it doesn't change shape and it stays light. And we get that superb cooling. Now at the very last step, I'll get in here with some 80 grit paper and smooth out this whole inside surface so air will tend to just flow right through. And we've got perfect clearance for some of the other exhaust systems and headers that we have. Having that big outlet hole. Certainly every step of this is going to be geared toward the ultimate, that we're not going to have a problem in hot weather. And be able to exchange and change exhaust systems and do the maintenance. Now there's one other little step left here. Now we did hit pretty close on the needle valve, right on the seam, which was one of the things I wanted to have, but now we have to take a little notch out of the cowl and reinforce it there so we don't get a stress crack. Now just getting this measured up here to where, and it's good that I have this spruce reinforcement here. I'm just going to have to take a little pie cut out, and that'll be as good as it gets. And when I want to take the engine out, I won't even have to take the needle valve out. So we're coming up on the end of this DVD. But I think we've gotten across a lot of good information, a lot of good things you can use right away on your own cowlings, no matter which one you make, no matter how you make it, to get the fits, to get the airflow correct. And again, on any rear exhaust engine, don't cheat yourself on cooling. Now, of course, and we'll do this off camera, we've got to do a final sanding and truing all these edges up. This will be a couple hours of just sanding and filling and truing and whatnot. But we have the basic shape. Main thing from the side, I have the basic shape I was looking for. I'm sure I have enough engine cooling there, and a good fit on the exhaust. And the next step is going to be to try to fit up the top on this, and we'll get to do that maybe on the next session. But I think there's some good information on cowlings here, and I hope you'll enjoy this, obviously, and enjoy sharing it as much as I have making it. And we'll see you on the next tape. I gotta tell you, I got a copy of this movie, The Hoax, and that footage that I just put on here of the XP11. I'll explain more on the next tape, because I've got a little explanation of something I think you'll find interesting about that. That was, I think, the only footage of the real XP11 that I know of. It's very rare to find that footage. I thought you'd enjoy that. Anyway, we are absolutely positively done with this tape, and we have 1,000 other projects to be working on, but I think that gives you a really good idea of how we've done the cowl for this ship that we're working on right now, the 90 Spitfire. And again, we will see you on the next tape.